Chapter 1650. Sam and Vikari were dumbfounded. What kind of mission was this? They didn't understand at all. However, this $1,000 was the real deal. They couldn't find a reason to reject it. Plus, it wasn't a risky mission. At least, that was what they thought. When they reached the hotel, Chen Zhao looked back at the two people in the car. Let's get a better car tomorrow. It's so uncomfortable. Sam and Vikari were helpless. They didn't have the money to get a better car. Unless they used all the money Chen Zhao gave them to buy a new car, they would probably be able to meet Chen Zhao's requirements. Sam, what do you think that guy does? Who cares? He has money anyway. Sam couldn't be bothered to think that much. He thought that Chen Zhao was just a rich person looking for fun. The next day, Portia felt extremely comfortable. She'd slept so well. But after checking the time, she was so scared that she scrambled up to wash up. It was already 9 in the morning. She'd slept for more than 10 hours. Chen Zhao's temper wasn't good. Portia hurried to Chen Zhao's room. Chen Zhao's door was open. 2 waiters were pushing a dining cart, preparing breakfast for him. Portia entered the room and saw that Chen Zhao was doing his morning exercise. Breakfast is ready. Please enjoy. After Portia tipped them, the 2 waiters bowed and left. Portia thought to herself as she looked at the prepared breakfast. This guy's even so extravagant for breakfast. This breakfast alone costs more than $1,000. Portia glanced at Chen Zhao, who was still running on the treadmill. She secretly picked up an egg roll and stuffed it into her mouth. But before she could swallow, she realized that Chen Zhao was already standing before her. Cough cough, Portia almost choked to death. Sit down and eat together, Chen Zhao said calmly. No need to sneak around. Then he went into the bathroom to wash up. Portia's face was bright red. She didn't know whether to sit or stand. After a while, Chen Zhao walked out of the bathroom. Portia's eyes widened when she saw Chen Zhao's figure. She couldn't help but swallow. She didn't expect this guy to have such a good figure. You're not eating? Chen Zhao sat on the sofa. Portia wanted to eat. The food here was all high-end. But she was a bit shy. Sit down and eat. After Chen Zhao spoke for the second time, Portia finally sat down to eat breakfast. Boss, do you have any plans for today? Just walking around. Do you have any recommendations? Chen Zhao asked. New Orleans Art Gallery. Wanna go? No. Chen Zhao rejected immediately. I don't have any artistic talent, so I can't pretend. Mr. Chen, do you want to see the longest bridge in the world, Lake Pontchartrain Bridge? Sure. The Lake Pontchartrain Bridge consists of 2 parallel bridges spanning Lake Pontchartrain, with a total length of 422 kilometers. The second bridge is 16 meters longer than the first. And this project was completed in 1969 last century. In one section of the Pontchartrain Bridge, there is an artificial island, a holiday resort for tourists. When you're full, help me choose a set of clothes. Boss, I'm not your servant. You need to ask Alex about the job of a personal assistant. All right. Portia was helpless. After getting dressed, he said, drive the car to the hotel entrance. Portia's lips twitched. Instinctively, she wanted to reject him. But after considering the situation, she gave up on the idea. She was already subconsciously following Chen Zhao's orders. Portia was obviously driving today. She was countless times more familiar with New Orleans than Chen Zhao. Boss, what business do you have in New Orleans this time? Do I need to prepare anything? Nothing. You don't need to worry about that. Portia was speechless. Her expertise was completely useless against Chen Zhao. She was almost reduced to Chen Zhao's servant. No, not almost. She was already reduced. But when the car reached the entrance of the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge, it was stopped. What's going on? Chen Zhao asked. I don't know. Portia shook her head. There was a checkpoint ahead. It was set up by the military. Chen Zhao and Portia got out of the car and looked ahead. Just then Chen Zhao saw a familiar-looking person. Demi Sonnenfeld. She seemed to be in charge here. She also saw Chen Zhao. She had a huge grudge against Chen Zhao. Back then Demi's father Sonnenfeld had gone bankrupt because of Chen Zhao. Then Chen Zhao had killed her commanding officer, Lieutenant Paul, in the Las Vegas desert. Chen Zhao had been very careful and didn't leave any evidence. However, Demi's hatred for Chen Zhao wouldn't disappear just because there was no evidence. Demi walked toward Chen Zhao. Why are you here? The disgust and hatred in Demi's eyes couldn't be hidden at all. Pfft. Looks like you got promoted. Did you replace Paul's position? Chen Zhao looked at Demi with a smile. I know you did it. Don't think I don't know. Lieutenant Paul's death is definitely related to you. Demi looked at Chen Zhao, gritting her teeth. How's your father? Chen Zhao asked, smiling. Demi exploded. Her father had gone bankrupt and owed tens of millions of dollars to the bank. Although Demi had brought him home now, her father had always been depressed. However, her father had always been depressed. He drank alcohol every day and was dispirited. Demi really wanted to pull out her gun, but she controlled her anger in the end. One day, I'll kill you legitimately. Demi gritted her teeth. Then I'll kill you right away. Chen Zhao scoffed at Demi's threat. On the other hand, Portia broke out in a cold sweat. Chen Zhao had a huge grudge against this military officer. Would he make things difficult for them? Miss Demi, can you tell me what happened? It's none of your business, Demi snorted. It's fine if you don't tell me, Chen Zhao said calmly. You have your own way to find out anyway. Then go find your way. Everything here is a military secret. If you keep asking, I can arrest you for endangering public safety and spying. Pfft. Please don't scare me. Otherwise, my lawyer team might go to the Department of National Defense. The most annoying group of people in the world was definitely lawyers. Especially the lawyers in the United States. They were definitely existences that could go against the heavens, the earth, and the air. They dared to sue the government, the military, and even the United Nations. There was nothing they didn't dare to go against. They were a bunch of mad dogs. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao had a bunch of mad dogs like that. Demi didn't have a legitimate reason to arrest him. Even if it was a legitimate arrest, Chen Zhao could guarantee that Demi would lose her military position. Chapter 1651. Actually, Demi was just trying to scare him. She knew that she couldn't do anything to Chen Zhao for now. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao's temper was too terrible. He wasn't even willing to suffer a loss with his words. Chen Zhao patted Demi's shoulder without hesitation. Your father has already gone bankrupt. If you lose your job, I think your father's creditors will pounce on you like mad dogs and tear your father apart. So you better think carefully before you speak. Demi's expression turned even uglier. Now that she had a military position, she could barely protect her father. If she lost her commission, her father would probably be sued by his creditors and thrown into prison. If someone interfered, her father might not be able to get out of prison alive. Demi's eyes were filled with murderous intent. But she really couldn't do anything now. If he didn't have a proper name, his words wouldn't be justified. If she couldn't do anything to Chen Zhao, she might even get herself into trouble. In Portia's eyes, Chen Zhao was definitely an evil rich man. However, Chen Zhao could only chat with Demi here. Demi would never let him go just because of his threat. The bridge of Lake Pontchartrain was uncrossable. Demi wasn't just targeting Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao could only ask Portia to turn the car around. Boss, where to now? Portia kept thinking about Demi's words. Demi said that Chen Zhao had killed an officer. This gave her goosebumps. She didn't know what Chen Zhao did. The only thing she knew about him was that he was rich. He was very rich. Now, she felt that Chen Zhao's money might have come from an illegal source. Her fear of Chen Zhao grew deeper and deeper. But now she was in a difficult position. As long as Chen Zhao didn't agree to her resignation, she couldn't leave. She was even more afraid to speak. She was worried that she had angered him. Chen Zhao threatened her family. Anyway, Portia was just scaring herself. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. Find a restaurant, Chen Zhao said. Boss, they've only been out for an hour. And you seem to have eaten a lot for breakfast. Breakfast? How could that be called breakfast? That wasn't even enough to fill Chen Zhao's teeth. If Chen Zhao really ate to his heart's content, he could probably empty the entire hotel. However, the energy efficiency of food was still too low for him. Chen Zhao still couldn't completely separate himself from the 5 grains. He could not eat the wind and drink the dew. However, not eating or drinking for more than 10 days was nothing to him. Of course, even though Chen Zhao was close to fasting. However, Chen Zhao's appetite was still much larger than a regular person's. Chen Zhao could already use his immortal power to ensure that he was never hungry. However, there were some trace elements that the human body needed that could not be provided by immortal energy. To put it bluntly, Chen Zhao didn't eat to eat now, but to replenish his micronutrients. Therefore, Chen Zhao's food combinations for each meal were very rich. "I'm hungry," he answered matter-of-factly. "Fine, you're the boss, you have the final say." But this time, he only told Portia to find a normal restaurant. Not those high-end restaurants that cost thousands of dollars for a meal. An hour later, Portia sat across from him. Chen Zhao was still wolfing down his food. How much did Chen Zhao eat? 10 servings of pasta, 20 servings of pepper scallops, 5 lobsters and 20 prawns. There were also 20 steaks and 5 roasted chickens. Portia had never seen someone with such a huge appetite. Just how many people's portions did he eat? 10 people? Or 20 people? Those who did not know would think that he was a beggar who hadn't eaten for a few days. Chen Zhao did not care about other people's opinions. He could eat however he wanted. "You eat some too," Chen Zhao said in the midst of his busy schedule. "Thanks, but it's okay." Portia forced a smile. "Okay. Tell the waiter to give me 20 medium-rare steaks. This restaurant's steaks are as good as the chef's. Oh, I saw that there's roasted lamb leg on the menu. Give me 2. "Boss, can you finish it?" "I never waste food," Chen Zhao said. After midnight, Chen Zhao walked out of the restaurant satisfied. Portia followed behind him. "Boss, you just ate a total of $2,380. "Okay, got it." Chen Zhao nodded. "This restaurant is still worth it. If we went to a high-end restaurant, this meal would cost at least tens of thousands. Spending $2,380 for a meal? Was that worth it?" But thinking about the amount he'd just eaten, it was indeed worth it. "Sis," a slightly childish voice said. Chen Zhao turned his head and saw a boy around 18 or 19 years old. Portia was stunned for a moment. "Billy, why are you here?" "I'm working part-time at this restaurant." Billy looked at Portia and then at Chen Zhao. "Sis, when did you come back to New Orleans? Also, who is he? Your boyfriend?" "No, he's my boss," Portia quickly explained. "I'm working now. I'll go visit you guys when I'm free." "Okay." Billy still had some baby fat on his face, but he was even taller than Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao did not know what these foreigners ate to be so tall at such a young age. Billy walked up to Chen Zhao. "Don't bully my sister, or I'll teach you a lesson. Portia, come to my room tonight. I have something I need you to deal with." Billy's face darkened. Chen Zhao smiled faintly. "If you continue to threaten me, your sister's job will be very difficult. Kid, don't trouble your sister with your immature way of thinking." Billy's face darkened. Billy's face turned red, and he stared at Chen Zhao hatefully. "Sis, don't work for him anymore. Billy, don't mind my business." Portia did not want Billy to get involved. Chen Zhao was clearly not a good person. If Billy angered him, the consequences would be unimaginable. Billy's face turned green as he watched Chen Zhao and his sister leave. He also felt that Chen Zhao was not a good person. If his sister worked for him, she might encounter indescribable trouble. No, he had to think of something. "Boss, Billy's just a kid. Don't lower yourself to his level." "Of course not," Chen Zhao replied, smiling. "I won't lower myself to a kid's level." "Then where are we going now? Is there anything more memorable in New Orleans?" "There's a street in New Moon City that sells traditional handicrafts. Most of the ancestors are French and Italian craftsmen. New Moon City's handicrafts are very famous." Chapter 1652. Actually, New Moon City was another name for New Orleans. But in New Orleans, there was an old part of the city that had always been called New Moon City. Because that area was more conservative, it had a very traditional architectural style and atmosphere. Chen Zhao listened as Portia introduced New Orleans. He could not help but interrupt. "New Moon City has such a stylish name. Why was it changed to New Orleans?" "New Orleans was named after Louis XV's regent, the Duke of Orleans," Portia said. "But New Orleans has another name. You definitely don't know." "What name?" "City of the Dead." "Isn't this name too ominous?" Chen Zhao frowned. "Actually, it's because New Orleans' terrain is low, and it's built on a swamp. It's almost the same as water level. Water will seep in after digging 2 or 3 meters. That's why the coffins of the dead here are all suspended. They're not buried underground, but in the tombs above the ground. But this also caused several plagues in New Orleans. It's all because the corpses were not buried. That's how the name City of the Dead came about. Portia paused for a moment before continuing. 15 years ago, Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans. Several cemeteries in the city were almost razed to the ground. At that time, thousands of corpses were scattered all over the city by the hurricane, making the name of the City of the Undead even more resounding. Chen Zhao frowned. Let's not go to New Moon City. Take me to a few cemeteries in the city. Portia was speechless. Why did he go to a cemetery instead of shopping? Did he eat too much? Boss, what's so good about those places? I just want to see the suspended tombs, Chen Zhao said calmly. Portia was speechless at Chen Zhao's unpredictable style. But what could she do? She was just a personal assistant. She could only do whatever the boss said. Portia sent Chen Zhao to a cemetery. Most cities had cemeteries in the suburbs. But in New Orleans, many cemeteries were in the city. Portia did not like to come to cemeteries. No one did. But she had no choice. Since Chen Zhao was coming, she could only follow. Chen Zhao got out of the car. Portia also got out. Visiting a cemetery? Only he could think of something like that. Portia followed behind him. He kept mumbling to himself. Chen Zhao realized that the graveyard was indeed very low. Some of the turf even seeped water when stepped on. However, Chen Zhao was confused. Surprisingly, Chen Zhao didn't feel any strong yin qi in the cemetery. After all, it was risky to leave the body on the ground. It wasn't just the plague. It was even more likely for them to turn into zombies. Once a corpse came into contact with the moonlight, it was very likely that it would turn into a zombie. The design of this tomb could gather yin and disperse yang. Therefore, logically speaking, the yin qi in this cemetery should be very heavy. But why was the yin qi here so weak? It was even worse than the cemeteries in other cities. Chen Zhao continued walking in the cemetery. Most of the mausoleums in the cemetery maintained a European architectural style. Actually, it was just a smaller version. Some of the mausoleums in the cemetery were relatively new. Many of the older parts were severely damaged. Portia felt very uncomfortable. Not everyone could stand in front of a stranger's mausoleum for a few minutes. Are you not feeling well? Chen Zhao looked back at Portia. Portia's expression was very ugly. Isn't that obvious? Are you feeling well? Okay. Chen Zhao really didn't have any other expression on his face. There was a problem here. This was Chen Zhao's conclusion. But even if he knew there was a problem here, it was useless. Chen Zhao could send Sam and Vicari to guard the two problematic places. But how would he guard the cemetery? The cemetery was an open area. Many people would come to sweep the graves every day. Even if someone came with ulterior motives, they wouldn't be able to tell. Unless Chen Zhao guarded the place personally. But Chen Zhao didn't plan on spending the night here. Take me to other cemeteries. Boss, why are you here? I plan on investing in a cemetery. Whoosh, Portia almost couldn't breathe. Boss, you're not joking, right? No. In the next 3 days, give me a proposal for the investment and construction of the cemetery. Boss, cemeteries are usually opened up by the government. There's no investment. No one has ever invested in cemeteries. Portia wanted to stop Chen Zhao's stupid idea. Fine. Chen Zhao shrugged. Portia heaved a sigh of relief. That was close. What was going on in Chen Zhao's head? How could he have such a weird idea? Portia hurriedly drove away with Chen Zhao. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Portia's mind. Boss, you're not messing with me, are you? Chen Zhao turned his head slowly. What? You said you're going to invest in cemeteries. Portia saw the mockery in Chen Zhao's eyes. This asterisk shoal is indeed messing with me. Then, Chen Zhao walked around the cemeteries one after another. Portia was about to go crazy. This guy must be crazy. He could go to the park, the mall, or even the street. What's so good about a cemetery? And he's enjoying it so much. Okay, let's go back to the hotel, Chen Zhao said. There was a man-made island on the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge. It was about 2 square kilometers. It was a leisure area that combined leisure, shopping, and entertainment. Many vehicles would make a detour to this recreational area. But last night something happened here. After midnight, the place was covered in fog. The dozens of employees in the leisure area lost contact with the outside world. According to the report, a body was found on the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge. It was confirmed to be an employee of the leisure area. Then the police sent a team into the area. But now even the police who had entered had disappeared. They had completely lost contact with them. Then the military announced that the bridge was closed and temporarily took over the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge. Even the military didn't know much about the situation in the leisure area now. High-altitude satellites couldn't penetrate the leisure area either. The military had sent 2 helicopters to hover above the leisure area. But both helicopters had crashed in the leisure area. The situation became even more complicated. But the military still didn't know what had happened inside. Demi had a headache now. The Lake Pontchartrain Bridge was the main road. There were close to 50,000 cars every day. Every minute she closed the bridge, the pressure would increase. From the city government to her boss, everyone kept urging her to solve the problem. Chapter 1653. Right now Demi had very limited information. She only knew that there seemed to be some kind of creature inside. But the number was unknown. Demi only had 2 choices now. Send troops to attack. Demi had troops. Very powerful troops. But from the current situation, the fog in the leisure area seemed to be harmful to the human body. The pilots of the 2 downed helicopters were wearing gas masks, but they still crashed. This meant that the fog could enter human pores. The only good thing was that the fog hadn't spread. Once it spread to the cities on both sides of the river, it would cause huge panic and casualties. If she sent troops to attack, she had to give the soldiers full protection first. Wearing full-body isolation suits would definitely affect their movements, even if they destroyed the thing inside. But how could they disperse the fog? This was also a problem. So, she could only ask for help from her superiors. Hello, I'm Portia, Mr. Chen's personal assistant. Who are you looking for? Personal assistant. Leong frowned. Where's Chen now? May I know who you are? Is Chen with you now? Get him on the phone. Sir, the boss isn't with me right now. If you need anything, I can pass it to him. Which phone is he using now? Leong asked impatiently. I'm sorry, sir. Without his permission, I can't give you his private number. Where's your boss now? Tell him to call me back. He knows my number. Okay, I'll tell him. Portia's answer was flawless. But just then, Portia's door was suddenly pushed open. Portia clearly remembered that her door was locked. How could it be? Who would come to her room at this time? Could it be Chen Zhao? Portia stood up and walked to the entrance. Then she saw 2 soldiers walk in. Behind them a woman walked in. Wasn't she the female officer who'd argued with Chen Zhao before the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge? What are you doing? This is my room. Please leave. Where did Chen Zhao go? Demi didn't waste time and went straight to the point. The boss is in his room. He's not in mine. Why are you here? Portia panicked. Did something happen to Chen Zhao? Is this woman here to capture Chen Zhao? 2 soldiers poked their heads into Portia's room and shook their heads at Demi. Give me his number. Portia immediately objected. I have no obligation to cooperate with you. But at that moment, Demi raised the gun and pointed it at Portia's head. Portia broke down. What happened to democracy and freedom? I hope you can seriously consider my request. I'm not very patient, especially when it comes to that bastard. Demi looked at Portia with a cold gaze. Do you understand? Portia was so scared that her legs turned to jelly, and she nodded subconsciously. Where did he go? He's in the room. He's not in his room. I've already been there, Demi said coldly. Portia's mind was blank. Had Chen Zhao received the news and escaped? What's his phone number? 19 *********. Demi dialed Chen Zhao's number. Hello, who is this? I'm Demi Sonnenfeld, Demi said. Sorry, you dialed the wrong number. Just as Chen Zhao was about to hang up, Demi immediately said, I'm with your little assistant. Chen Zhao chuckled. You're not going to use her life to threaten me, right? Let's not talk about whether she's that important to me. Even if I care about her, can you kill her? Don't forget that you're a soldier. You protect the American people. The military has the power to force conscription during special times. She'll become a soldier soon and go on a dangerous mission. Okay, What do you want to talk to me about? Where are you right now? Playing outside. Why? Go back to the hotel immediately. I don't have time. If you want to wait, then wait. If not, then let her go to the battlefield. Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. When are you coming back? Depends on my mood. Chen Zhao didn't know why Demi wanted to talk to him. But it had nothing to do with Chen Zhao. Demi was also very angry. At the same time, she was even more anxious. She asked for help from her superior. Then for some reason her superior recommended Chen Zhao to her. Chen Zhao didn't care how anxious Demi was. Anyway, he wasn't in a hurry. Chen Zhao drove to the restaurant that was open at night yesterday. When the bearded owner saw Chen Zhao, he immediately placed the menu before Chen Zhao. After ordering some food, Chen Zhao called Sam and Vikari to inform them. 10 minutes later, the two arrived. Sir. Yes, sit down and eat something, Chen Zhao said casually. The two were indeed a bit hungry. They didn't stand on ceremony with Chen Zhao. They picked up the hamburger and sandwiches and started eating. Did you monitor those two places like I asked? Chen Zhao asked. Yes, Sam said. I sat in the car all day. I was even questioned by the patrolling police. Did you find anything? No, I waited all day and no one went near that house. Sam shook his head. Chen Zhao turned to Vikari. What about you? Me too, Vikari said. I didn't see anyone go near the abandoned toll station. Chen Zhao tossed $1,000 in front of the two. You two install a driving recorder in your car, Chen Zhao said. Sir, do you not trust us? Yes. Why should Chen Zhao trust them? The two could only lower their heads and eat the food in their hands helplessly. It made sense. They didn't have anything worthy of Chen Zhao's trust. After all, they weren't familiar with each other, and they were gangsters. Sir, can you tell me who you're looking for? No, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Call me immediately if you find anything. As long as you find the person I'm looking for, I'll give you a large sum of money. Even if you don't find the person, I'll pay you every day according to our agreement. Of course, if you play tricks, I'll find someone to kill you. Sir, we know some people. They might be able to help you find the person you're looking for. No need, Chen Zhao rejected directly. They could only find gangsters. Plus, if there were too many people, it would be easy to leak that he was looking for someone. If the spiritualists wanted to hide, it wouldn't be easy for Chen Zhao to find them. Please remember the domain name of this book. 9 Heavens God King. Chapter 1654. In fact, Chen Zhao had only asked them to watch over the place with a probing attitude. Chen Zhao wouldn't put all his hopes on two hooligans. If they didn't have a chance, then Chen Zhao would follow his original plan. If you guys watch the place for me at night, I'll pay you 500 more. Sam and Vikari looked at each other. They didn't know who Chen Zhao was looking for. But Chen Zhao's price wasn't low. Even a private detective wouldn't pay 1,000 a day. Chen Zhao obviously wasn't that rich. It was mainly because the mission was dangerous. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't plan on letting them take the risk. As long as they found someone, they could call Chen Zhao immediately. Mr. Chen, does tonight count? I promise I won't play any tricks, Vikari said sincerely. Sure. Chen Zhao nodded. Call me if you find anything. Okay. I'll go back now. With that, Chen Zhao stood up and left. Demi was still waiting for him in the hotel. He hoped that Portia hadn't broken down yet. Chen Zhao whistled and returned to the hotel. As soon as he entered the lobby, he saw a few people staring at him. Judging from their auras, they should be soldiers. What? Are they going to beat me up? Chen Zhao couldn't be bothered with them. It was impossible for him to kill them in front of everyone. Chen Zhao whistled and entered the elevator. The soldiers in civilian clothes followed them in. A minute later, Chen Zhao arrived at Portia's floor. There was only one person standing in the elevator. The others were all lying on the ground. The soldier broke out in a cold sweat. They were soldiers who had been trained for a few years. They could definitely do something on the battlefield. But in the end, they were all beaten down by that man in less than 10 seconds. Chen Zhao pushed open Portia's door. Instantly, a gun was pointed at Chen Zhao's head. Bang! In the room, Portia and Demi saw a soldier fly in. They lay on the ground and didn't get up. Demi's expression darkened as she watched Chen Zhao walk in. You'd better explain to me why you hit my people. You'd better explain to me why your men pointed a gun at my head. At the same time, he turned to Portia. Portia, I heard that something happened to you, so I immediately came back to save you. Are you touched? Portia looked at Chen Zhao, as if she was looking at a demon. She had heard the conversation between Chen Zhao and Demi very clearly. This guy didn't care about her life at all. Demi took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her heart. Mr. Chen, in the name of the military, I would like to hire you as a special consultant. Not interested, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Demi could trick Portia, but that didn't mean she could trick Chen Zhao. You have no right to refuse. Ha! Chen Zhao laughed mockingly. And then? Demi knew that being tough was useless, so she could only calm herself down and try her best to control her emotions. Mr. Chen, consider it as hiring. The military will pay you. Fine, how much do you want to pay me? Chen Zhao asked. $2 million. Portia sucked in a cold breath. So much money. Didn't Demi have a grudge against Chen Zhao? Why did she hire Chen Zhao now? And $2 million right off the bat. Portia had thought that Demi was here to capture Chen Zhao. But things weren't what she had imagined at all. Do you know that even if I don't do anything, my monthly income is close to $70 million? Chen Zhao looked at Demi. In other words, the pay you gave me isn't even enough for a day's income. Also, given the bad record of the military, I'm doubtful if the military can keep its promise. After all, I don't want the Las Vegas incident to happen again, right? Portia was completely dumbfounded. $70 million a month? What kind of joke was this? Was Chen Zhao a drug dealer? Tell me, how much do you want? Tell me what happened first, Chen Zhao said calmly. Demi looked at Portia. Go out first, Chen Zhao ordered Portia. There was no benefit for her to get involved. Also, this should be a military secret. It was very dangerous for ordinary people to know military secrets. Even if Demi wouldn't do anything to Portia in front of Chen Zhao, for a long time in the future, Portia might be under the military's surveillance. After Portia walked out of the room, the door was closed. Another soldier stood guard outside. The leisure area of the artificial island under the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge has been shrouded in mist since last night, Demi said. Other than the dozens of employees in the leisure area, a few more groups of people have entered the island. From what we know, there's some kind of creature on the island. From the corpses we've found, that thing eats people. The mist was released by that thing. The mist also has a very strong anesthetic effect. It's 100 times stronger than the current military tranquilizer gun bullets. As long as a part of the mist comes into contact with it, you'll lose all feeling and touch. You have experience dealing with abnormal creatures, so I need you to lead a team in and find a way to disperse the mist. It'd be best if you can kill those creatures. You said it yourself. The mist has a very strong anesthetic effect. I'll just be a piece of rotten meat if I go in. All of you will wear military isolation suits, Demi said. It's only one level lower than spacesuits. It's completely sealed. I can consider it, Chen Zhao said. But it's still very risky for me. $5 million. As long as you're willing to accept this mission, the military can give you $5 million and pay 20% in advance. Chen Zhao shook his head. $20 million, and it'll be paid in full. That's impossible. Demi immediately yelled. The military won't pay such a high price. Portia, who was outside, heard Demi's yell. However, with the soldier at the door watching, Portia didn't dare to approach. I don't have enough benefits. Why should I participate in such a dangerous mission? Also, your credibility is too low. I don't trust you at all. I can't make the decision. Then find someone who can, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Oh, please make a decision soon. After all, I don't like to stay up late. Even though Demi hated Chen Zhao to the bone, she couldn't do anything to him. Also, I won't go with that team you mentioned. Who knows if your people will shoot me in the back. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1655. A while later, Chen Zhao's phone rang. It was Liang Chen. Help me. The situation this time is very serious. If the fog spreads, it'll cause huge casualties to the cities on both sides of the artificial island. This isn't California, Chen Zhao said. So I have no reason to do volunteer work. Plus, this is very risky for me. Shouldn't the military show enough sincerity when hiring someone? But your asking price of $20 million is too high. No, it's not high at all, Chen Zhao said. I think it matches my current value. Chen, just do me a favor. We're friends. Of course, I'm willing to help you. We're friends. Chen Zhao didn't believe it himself, let alone Lei Ong. They'd never been friends. But they weren't enemies now. That was all. Lei Ong was someone who prioritized benefits. Back then, he'd become Chen Zhao's enemy mainly because the supernatural organization couldn't be controlled. But now, Lei Ong wasn't the head of the anti-terrorism security department anymore. So whether the supernatural organization was controlled by the anti-terrorism security department or not had nothing to do with him. So it wasn't impulsive to become Chen Zhao's enemy now. It was stupid. The Lake Pontchartrain Bridge incident this time had nothing to do with Lei Ong. Lei Ong was just helping his colleague. It could also be considered an exchange of benefits. If Chen Zhao helped, he was helping him. If he didn't help, he wouldn't get hurt. Anyway, Lei Ong was doing a business without buying or selling. So you agree? Lei Ong, something's wrong with my body recently. I accidentally hurt myself while practicing magic. I can die at any time. So I need to save money for my family. Okay, I understand. I'll send your condition to the military. A while later, Demi came to Chen Zhao with a murderous expression. My superior has already agreed to your request. I can give you the money, but I'll only transfer it after you solve the problem. Cough. I haven't been feeling well recently. I'll go back and sleep. Wait. I can transfer 20% first, Demi said. Goodbye. 50%. I'll transfer you $10 million first. I want everything, not a penny less. Demi gritted her teeth at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't trust Demi or the military. If the military wanted to renege on the debt, there was nothing he could do. Of course, it wasn't completely impossible. It was nothing more than mutual harm. But in the end, it was still Chen Zhao who was at a disadvantage. Okay, $20 million. I'll transfer the money now. Demi compromised in the end. There was no other way. Chen Zhao was too stubborn. And every minute the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge was blocked was a penny lost. The pressure on Demi increased as well. If this matter could not be resolved satisfactorily, then her development in the military would come to an end. The money has been transferred. Chen Zhao nodded and walked out of the room. Portia said, help me check if there's any cash in my account. Yes, boss, Portia replied carefully. A minute later, Portia stared at Chen Zhao in shock. Boss, you just received $20 million. Very good. Chen Zhao finally looked satisfied. In any case, it was not a loss to make $20 million in one night. You can go now, right? Of course. Hurry up and take me there. I really want to save those in danger right now. Demi felt like her fists were thirsty. If not for the fact that she couldn't beat Chen Zhao, she really wanted to kill Chen Zhao now. Boss, where are you going? Shopping, Chen Zhao said. You want to come? Really? Shopping? Yes. Where's the nearest cemetery? Help me check. Portia was about to break down. Boss, I'm tired. Forget it, Chen Zhao said considerately. You can rest. When Chen Zhao and Demi arrived at the elevator, Demi saw that her subordinates were all injured. Demi's face darkened. Who did it? Everyone looked at Chen Zhao. Demi glared at Chen Zhao. You dare to attack my people? Demi had always been a very protective person. Seeing her subordinates get beaten up, her anger exploded. Are they your people? I thought they were bad guys with bad intentions. Chen Zhao looked at Demi innocently. It was as if he was saying, trust me. You better not die in there. Demi cursed Chen Zhao viciously. So many people want me to die, but I'm still alive and well. Chen Zhao glanced at Demi. But the people who curse me will most likely die. You should be careful. They arrived at the checkpoint at the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge. Demi found the adjutant and asked, what's the situation now? The fog has expanded by 10%. We found another corpse in Lake Pontchartrain. Nothing else has changed. How's the preparation for our assault team? We've already organized a team of 20, the adjutant said. We're just waiting for the commander's order. Our assault team will enter the artificial island. Demi looked at Chen Zhao. Are you sure you want to go alone? Anyway, I won't go with your people. With our grudge, I doubt you'll order your subordinates to shoot me. The aide looked at Chen Zhao in surprise. He didn't know Chen Zhao. He didn't know Chen Zhao and Demi's personal grudge. However, he was surprised that Chen Zhao would say this in front of Demi. We're soldiers, Demi said with a dark expression. We have moral boundaries. Moral boundaries? You're talking to me about moral boundaries? Chen Zhao snorted. Is your moral boundary to go back on your word? Oh, don't blame me for your commander's death. If you hadn't instigated it, Paul wouldn't have died. You finally admit that you did it. So what if I admit it? Do you have evidence? Don't forget that you were watching me the whole time. You're my most powerful witness. Most of the time, the military doesn't need evidence. Demi looked at Chen Zhao darkly. That's true, Chen Zhao sneered. But you better ask your superior if you have the courage to do it to me. Guys, now's not the time to argue, the adjutant said, trying to smooth things over. Only then did Chen Zhao and Demi stop arguing. Get me an isolation suit, Chen Zhao said. Don't play tricks on the suit. If I find out, I'll flip out. Ignoring Chen Zhao, Demi turned to the adjutant. Assault team, prepare to enter the artificial island. Chapter 1656. Chen Zhao's background was different from the military's assault team. However, the two groups had set off together. Chen Zhao put on the isolation suit. The 20 members of the assault team were all dressed neatly too. Of course, their equipment had to be more varied. There were large-caliber submachine guns, explosive grenades, and thermal scanners. The assault team looked at Chen Zhao curiously. Apart from the isolation suit, Chen Zhao didn't bring anything else. Most importantly, he was still holding the hood. He didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. After all, the assault team members were all extremely nervous. Most importantly, the guy had taken out a can of beer from somewhere and was drinking it as he walked. After that, he threw it everywhere. Captain, who's that guy? I don't know. Benjamin shook his head. He also didn't know who the guy in front was. Fuck, we're carrying guns and cannons. That guy only has a box of beer, right? The assault team members were all pissed off. But they couldn't help it. They weren't together. Plus, the guy was walking in front. It was clear that they weren't on the same path. Lizink, what's your situation now? Sir, who's that guy in front? Don't mind him. He's not an enemy or a friend. Will he obstruct our mission? His mission is the same as yours. Destroy all the unknown creatures on the artificial island and find a way to disperse the fog. But he doesn't have any weapons, Lizink said indignantly. And he's been drinking beer along the way. Doesn't he know that he's on a mission now? Lizink was very unbalanced. Their journey wasn't short. It was a full 20 kilometers. Plus, they were equipped with equipment that weighed less than 30 kilograms. To reduce the burden, they didn't even bring drinking water. Now they could only watch Chen Zhao drink along the way, but they could only watch others drink. They were carrying a lot of equipment and sweating profusely, but they couldn't drink anything. Anyone would be mentally unbalanced. In fact, many people in the assault team were already mentally unbalanced. Sir, my teammates need drinking water, Lizink said. We've already walked 10 kilometers with weights. We'll enter the fog in half an hour, but my teammates are in bad shape. All right, wait here. I'll send a transport vehicle to resupply you. Not long after, the supply vehicle arrived. It was an armored vehicle. Although the assault team members could temporarily quench their thirst, they were drinking water while the others were drinking alcohol. They still felt it was unfair. Why no wine? I want beer. A member of the team complained. Shut up, Luxembourg scolded. He wasn't happy either, but he wouldn't say what he was thinking. Of course, he also knew that he was on a mission. It was unrealistic to drink during a mission. In the end, the psychological quality of these soldiers was too poor. It could even be said that she was spoiled. After the assault team replenished some of their energy, they continued to move forward. By then, Chen Zhao had already disappeared. Suddenly, Luxembourg stopped in his tracks. Stop! Luxembourg came to the side of the bridge, where there was obvious damage to the concrete. There were also fresh bloodstains on it, and from the looks of it, it was very fresh. Captain, what happened? That person was attacked just now, Luxembourg said. He might already be dead. For some reason, The commando team members all felt a little relieved, but also a little gloating. Okay, be careful, Luxembourg said. Everyone was immersed in their own emotions. Suddenly, they heard a whistling sound. It was like a gust of wind. But it was not a gust of wind. It was a gray shadow. What's that? Da-da-da. The few soldiers standing in front opened fire first. The figure let out a strange cry. Then something fell, and the figure swept across the bridge, jumping into the sea below the bridge with a splash. The speed of that figure was simply too fast. They were all well trained, but they could only barely catch the figure's movements. Luxembourg walked to the front and looked down. It was an arm. A human arm. Hiss, was that a human? How is that possible? How can a human be so fast? Suddenly the arm on the ground moved. Everyone was startled. At this moment, the severed arm suddenly stood up. Then its 5 fingers moved on the ground. Everyone looked at each other, with incredulous looks on their faces. Luxembourg reacted abruptly, and kicked the severed arm away. The severed arm rolled twice on the ground. Suddenly, it jumped up and grabbed at Luxembourg. Luzink suddenly pulled out his dagger and slashed. His severed arm was once again cut into 2. This time the arm didn't move. Blood seeped out. Be careful, something doesn't seem right. Luxembourg wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he crouched down to study it. Why did the arm seem to be alive earlier? But why did it die after he cut it in half? Luxembourg found that there was a cut spore at the place where he cut it. Was it because of the spore? Luxembourg wasn't sure. After reporting the situation to Demi, Luxembourg led the team forward. After walking for about 20 minutes, they finally approached the foggy area. Hiss! Everyone's earpieces were filled with noisy interference sounds. Adjust the frequency and switch to internal communication, Luzink ordered. Clearly, they had cut off all communication with the outside world. Don't be careless. Not only was their external communication cut off, but the visibility in the fog was only about 5 meters. Plus, the enemy was extremely fast. This was a huge test for everyone. Luxembourg knew that he could hit that figure on the bridge. It wasn't just because of his reaction speed. It was also because of the distance. It gave them some time to prepare. But the visibility in the fog was so low. In other words, if they encountered that thing again, it would be very difficult for them to hit the target. Even at this time, if that thing rushed into their formation, it would bring great trouble. So Luxembourg arranged for the people in the middle to use pistols and daggers for defense. This was indeed the best choice. Luxembourg was worthy of being an experienced veteran, and he immediately thought of a countermeasure. Just then, there seemed to be a figure in front of them, but because they were in the fog, it was very hard to tell. Shoot at will. Chapter 1657. No matter what that figure was, he couldn't get close to it. It was too dangerous in such an environment. Plus, this was a battlefield. If they waited for him to give the order to shoot, they might delay the battle, or even cause the team to collapse. So he had to give the order to shoot at will. Da-da-da-da. The figure disappeared instantly. Luxembourg raised his hand and put it away. The gunshot stopped. Luxembourg gave the order to advance cautiously. There was a pool of blood on the ground. It seemed that the thing they attacked was injured. Did it not die again? Whoosh! Right at this moment, a whistling sound rang out in everyone's ears. They weren't unfamiliar with this sound. Something was in the fog. However, because the sound transmitted in the fog would be repeatedly reflected, it caused the sound to become very chaotic. Just then a figure rushed out of the fog. The figure was too fast. Luxembourg's reaction was the fastest and he fired instantly. But the figure instantly avoided its original position and circled to the side. Bang bang, Luxembourg switched to using his pistol. One shot missed and one hit. The figure stopped. Only then did everyone see it clearly. Wasn't it a person? Luxembourg fired another shot at the figure's head. He used the Desert Eagle, which could be said to be the most powerful pistol. The thing's head exploded instantly, but its movements didn't stop. It continued to charge at the commando formation. Everyone was a little shocked. It could still move without a head. One of the commandos was thrown to the ground by the headless thing. Then the thing started to tear the commando's uniform. Luxembourg stepped forward and kicked the thing over, stabbing it with all his might with his dagger. But it wasn't dead yet. Luxembourg suddenly remembered that there were also swollen spores on the thing's body, and there were quite a few of them. Luxembourg raised his dagger and stabbed one of the spores on the thing's chest. Instantly, the thing's body stopped moving, but its limbs were still moving. Luxembourg saw that there were a few spores on the thing's limbs. Luxembourg immediately used his pistol and shot the spores on the thing's left arm. When the spores were shot, its left arm stopped moving, then the right arm, then the thigh. These are living corpses just like the zombies in Resident Evil. It's useless to attack their brains. The spores on these things should be some kind of parasitic organism, and wherever they are, that part will have an independent life, Lizink said. If he was just guessing before, he could confirm his guess now. Merrick, how are you? No, I'm fine. Merrick was the one who had been attacked by the parasite earlier. He didn't dare tell Lizink that his protective suit was torn. But before he set off, he was told that the fog here had an extremely strong anesthetic effect. Logically speaking, he should have been anesthetized by now. But the truth was that he wasn't affected. Also, his inner thigh seemed to be injured. It worried him if he told Luxembourg that he was injured. Would Luxembourg think that he was infected and abandon him? They might even be killed. That's good. Let's move on. Luxembourg nodded. He did not notice Merrick's strange behavior. After all, they were separated by the protective suit, and Merrick sounded slightly panicked. He just thought that it was because he had just been attacked. The team continued to advance normally, but they did not know that as soon as they left, the headless corpse that should have been dead stood up again. There was a spore on the back of the corpse. It was the first time for the commando team, including Luxembourg, to deal with such abnormal organisms. No matter what glorious achievements the commando team had in the past, they had no experience in dealing with supernatural events. Thus, Luxembourg found the weakness of these living corpses with his quick thinking. He did not examine the corpses carefully. The limbs of the corpses were changing. The bullets started being forced out of the gunshot wounds, and then healed. Not long after, the living corpse turned back into a complete body with 4 limbs and an abnormally developed head. However, before the living corpse could move, an even larger figure rushed out of the fog, instantly biting the newly recovered living corpse and devouring it in large mouthfuls. Suddenly, the huge living corpse stopped eating and turned to look at the mist. Chen Zhao walked out of the fog. The huge living corpse immediately pounced at Chen Zhao. Come here. Chen Zhao lifted his leg and kicked the corpse away. Chen Zhao did not care whether he killed it or not. He had been following behind the commando team. Merrick's infection had also happened under his watch. But Chen Zhao wanted to know if there were any changes during the infection. As for the commando team's life and death, what did that have to do with him? Was he familiar with them? What happened on the artificial island was definitely not a sudden event. It was man-made. The fog here was filled with a chemical smell. There were magic spores floating in the air. It was clearly a person with a certain level of chemical production ability. At the same time, this person or the organization behind him had spiritualist abilities. The combination of the two created the incident on the artificial island. But the fog would quickly evaporate into the air. So, the fog had to be released continuously. Otherwise, it would have dissipated long ago. As for the possibility of it spreading, as long as the machine that released the fog didn't suddenly increase its release speed by 100 times, there was no possibility of it spreading. Chen Zhao did not destroy the machine, because it had already happened. There was no one alive on the island, except for him and the commando team. Chen Zhao was more interested in the changes and reactions of the people infected by the magic spores. As for who was doing the experiment on the island, Chen Zhao could not find it. He did not have the time to chase the culprit for the military. Of course, it was not that he had no clues at all. Chen Zhao discovered that almost all the machines in the leisure area of the artificial island had been destroyed. Only the surveillance and power supply were still normal. If he followed this trail, he might be able to find more clues. But he still went to the surveillance room and removed all the hard drives. What happened here? Could it be related to the Satanists? Chen Zhao guessed. Chen Zhao's small world could not cover the entire artificial island, but a small area was still under Chen Zhao's surveillance. Just then, Chen Zhao discovered that a monster had entered the range of his small world. Chapter 1658. The monster was heading toward the assault team. Chen Zhao stood on the roof of a 3-story building. In fact, he was less than 20 meters away from the assault team. But the fog blocked their line of sight. Even if they stood close, they couldn't see them. Some monsters noticed Chen Zhao, but he kicked them away. The monsters killed each other. They didn't group up to attack Chen Zhao. Finally, the first casualty of the assault team appeared. It wasn't the infected Merrick. It was another team member. 2 living corpses charged into the formation and disrupted the assault team's deployment. Chen Zhao realized that the attacks of these living corpses were only average. Of course, they weren't average when compared to Chen Zhao. They were compared to the American soldiers. Their only advantage was speed. Furthermore, it was because of this thick fog. If it wasn't for the fog, the American soldiers had cleaned them up a long time ago. But it was the fog that prevented the soldiers from getting what they wanted. At this moment, Merrick finally made his move. He wasn't himself anymore. The magic spores had seeped into his brain. He was a living corpse now too, just like the zombie spores in the Amazon rainforest. But he didn't turn into a brainless creature. He had human intelligence. In a situation that no one had expected, Merrick grabbed a former comrade. Then he dragged him into the fog. The comrade that Merrick had dragged into the fog was bitten to death. Chen Zhao watched all this without any intention of interfering. After eating the man, Merrick became even stronger. The magic spores had completely changed him. Living corpses didn't have digestive systems anymore. They could directly turn food into energy. There was an advantage to this. Their physical strength could reach an unbelievable level in a short time. But the disadvantages were also obvious. It was like a person who'd taken stimulants. Even sitting still was very tiring. Once their energy was depleted to a certain level, they would feel even more thirsty. They needed more food to replenish the energy they used up. If there was enough food here, these living corpses would work together to fight against outsiders. But there were only living corpses here. There were no other creatures. They could only eat each other. But now the assault team had arrived. All the living corpses focused their attention on the assault team. Chen Zhao also realized something else. The living corpses with more parasite spores. They were not stronger than their own kind, but they were more energetic. In other words, their energy consumption and control were more precise. After Merrick devoured the body of his former comrade, he took off his isolation suit. It came into contact with the mist in the air on a large scale, and allowed the magic spores in the mist to parasitize it. These magic spores could not be attached directly to the skin. They needed to enter the blood or oral cavity before they could parasitize Merrick. And it wasn't an ordinary parasite. It was the first magic spore. The host was like a house, and the magic spores were the owners and tenants. The owner could not rent to as many tenants as he wanted. They needed to devour more people or their own kind, obtain their flesh and blood, and then turn their flesh and blood into their own, so that more magic spores could parasitize them. Merrick did not attack the commandos directly. It had its eyes on another of its kind, a weaker living corpse. Without much effort, Merrick made it a part of himself. Merrick's body started to mutate. An arm popped out from its left shoulder. But Merrick's changes did not stop there. It didn't just have an extra arm. Instead, it was an invisible change inside its body. Its body structure became more reasonable. From a certain perspective, it was also evolving. But evolution was not that easy. Chen Zhao had gone through a few evolutions. However, his body's evolution came from the golden key. Every time, it consumed a large amount of energy. But the energy needed for a living corpse to evolve was through devouring. This kind of evolution was very unstable. If Chen Zhao's evolution process was like building a building, he would only go up a little bit each time. But it was stable. On the other hand, the evolution of a living corpse was like building blocks. It could go up very high in a short time, but it would collapse easily. This was the difference between the two. Actually, this analogy was not appropriate. The process of human evolution was a process of building skyscrapers. The foundation was already there. All of Chen Zhao's evolutions were built on this foundation. But the evolution of a living corpse was different. It was to push away this foundation and then say, "Come, let's build blocks." Actually, human evolution was traceable. The first was the evolution of appearance. Humans had always been evolving in the direction of becoming taller and more in line with the environment. Why did humans like beauty? This was actually determined by their genes. Putting aside individual differences in aesthetics, humans subconsciously thought that beauty was more advanced. So the direction of human evolution would be more in line with their own aesthetics. As long as the environment did not change drastically, then the general direction of human evolution would not change. It would not become uglier as one evolved. Of course, this kind of ugliness did not refer to the face, but the distortion of the body. In fact, this kind of aesthetics did not only happen to humans. Many species in the world actually evolved in this direction too. Humans also tended to like cute and beautiful animals. There were also aesthetic tendencies among the same species. What happened on this artificial island was probably caused by a madman or a crazy organization. It might even be the government. Don't think that it was impossible. Some small towns in America's borders had mysteriously disappeared. Similar secrets were kept in the supernatural society. The assault team lost a few more people. Merrick was even more cunning. It had been secretly following the assault team. Whether the members of the assault team died, or the living corpses were destroyed, it devoured the corpses. Lusink, the leader of the assault team, felt that it was too risky to move in an open space. He decided to enter the largest building on the artificial island, which was the supermarket. The supermarket was an enclosed space, so there was not much fog inside. But to Chen Zhao, this was a very wrong decision. In this world, if there was a man-made maze, it would undoubtedly be a supermarket. Large supermarkets would try to make the terrain as complicated as possible. It was so that the customers could not walk out. Now the assault team had entered an enormous maze. Chapter 1659. The commando team's only advantage now was their firearms. In this world, guns and ammunition still had great lethality. Even Chen Zhao didn't dare to say that he was immune to all firearms. However, the firearms they were equipped with needed a wide field of vision to be most effective. Outside the building, their firearms were limited by the fog and couldn't capture the enemy immediately. But in the maze, there were too many obstacles, making it harder for their firearms to be effective. Chen Zhao could see this problem, and so could Lusink. However, people would develop psychological problems if they stayed in the fog for too long. Even Lusink felt the pressure in his body and mind. He didn't know if he continued to stay in the fog, would the commando team break down first? So he had to enter the building. The supermarket's electricity was still running. The entire place was brightly lit. However, there was no one. Everyone heaved a long sigh of relief. It was as if all the pressure in their hearts had been released. Chen Zhao also entered the supermarket. He realized that there were no magic spores here. That shouldn't be the case. Although the supermarket was a sealed space, it wasn't truly sealed. There shouldn't be any magic spores, right? But after thinking about it, Chen Zhao understood what was going on. The existence of magic spores depended on the spread of the mist. However, large supermarkets like this all had air purifiers. Those high-powered air purifiers directly cleared the fog and magic spores in the air. Leader, the air quality is good. Don't take off all the isolation suits yet, Lusink said. I'll take them off first. If I have any adverse reactions in 10 minutes, immediately inject me with a neutralizer. Lusink still chose to be cautious. However, 10 minutes later, Lusink could finally confirm that there were no harmful gases in the air. Okay, take off your isolation suits and breathe in the fresh air. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Bang! Suddenly, a voice made everyone tense up. Even though they had just relaxed, everyone pointed their guns at the source of the sound. It was a living corpse with pustules all over its body. However, this living corpse wasn't like the flesh and blood they'd seen before. The body of this living corpse was filled with a metallic luster. You, Merrick. It's you. Everyone looked at Merrick in disbelief. He could still vaguely make out Merrick's face. It wasn't just Merrick who had been infected by the magic spores. Furthermore, there were 3 pairs of arms on his back. Everyone was a little surprised. He didn't expect it to only disappear for a little more than an hour. That was what Merrick had become. Bang! Lusink raised his Desert Eagle and fired a shot at Merrick's head. Merrick tilted his head back slightly. The bullet was embedded in Merrick's forehead. The skin on Merrick's forehead twitched, and the bullet fell to the ground. Everyone was shocked. Bang! Suddenly, another loud noise came from behind. Then, a giant beast blocked the assault team's path. The giant beast smashed through 2 rows of shelves on the left and right, glaring at the assault team members with ferocious eyes. It looked like a dog. To be precise, he was a dog when he was alive. But at this moment, it had already severed its relationship with the dog. It was much larger than Merrick. It was at least 4 meters long. Its entire body seemed to be severely scalded. Almost all of its skin had fallen off. It was covered in blood and smoke rose faintly from its body. Sharp bone spikes grew out of its joints. Then, more loud noises came from the assault team's right. Rows of shelves were flipped over and sent flying. The assault team turned around. It was a living corpse that looked like a mountain gorilla. One could still vaguely tell what the corpse used to look like. However, its forelimbs had clearly evolved much faster than its hind limbs. Merrick, the zombie dog, and the gorilla monster stood in a triangle, surrounding the assault team. The assault team's faces were extremely pale. They all looked at the 3 monsters in fear. Luxembourg was also at a loss. Suddenly, he saw a figure sitting on one of the shelves. Luxembourg's eyes narrowed. It's that person. Is he a human or an infected corpse? Luxembourg wasn't sure. Chen Zhao sat on the top of the shelf with his legs crossed, watching the situation below. Chen Zhao met Luxembourg's gaze and grinned. He waved at Luxembourg. You're not infected? Hearing Luxembourg's words, everyone looked up at Chen Zhao too. How is that possible? You're not dead. Why are you here? Why do you think I'm dead? Chen Zhao chuckled. You're alone and don't have any equipment. How can you avoid these monsters? Huh? Chen Zhao chuckled. He clearly wasn't going to answer this question. Do you still have time to ask me questions? We don't have much time. Do you? One had to admit that Luxembourg's intentions were very sinister. He wanted to lure a monster to attack Chen Zhao. That way, they could retreat from the encirclement. If the 3 monsters surrounded them from 3 directions, their chances of winning weren't high. But if they could lure a monster to attack Chen Zhao, their pressure would be greatly reduced. Moreover, after a short encounter, they realized that these monsters were very, very smart. Apart from being irrational, they weren't any less intelligent than humans. Apart from their lack of rationality, their intelligence was no less than that of humans. Their battle instincts were even stronger than humans. Everyone in the assault team was armed to the teeth. They knew what to do. They might not be able to win against the assault team head-on. Even Merrick, who could block bullets. It didn't mean that he could remain unscathed against firearms. After all, it was only the Desert Eagle that attacked him just now. The assault team's automatic rifles were much more powerful than the Desert Eagle. Moreover, there were other firearms. For example, explosive grenades. They were enough to cause damage to him. They weren't fatal, but they were still a great threat. As expected, Merrick turned to look at Chen Zhao. Merrick wasn't the Merrick of the past anymore. However, it had a very good understanding of firearms. Therefore, he instinctively thought that it wasn't worth it to fight the assault team head-on. Moreover, there were 2 living corpses that weren't weaker than him. If he advanced too recklessly and got heavily injured, the 2 monsters would seize the opportunity and swallow him whole. He was more willing to be like before. When the sandpiper and clam fought, he would be the fisherman. Merrick slowly took a few steps back. Luxembourg was overjoyed. It seemed that his plan had succeeded. As expected, Merrick retreated. The perfect encirclement already had a hole. Chapter 1660. As soon as Merrick moved, the assault team immediately retreated toward the hole Merrick had created. Merrick looked at Chen Zhao. After a brief pause, Merrick attacked Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't even stand up. He casually slapped him. Merrick was sent flying by the slap. Lusink and the others suddenly realized that Merrick had returned to them. Of course, Merrick didn't appear before them in a normal way. Instead, he was smashed by someone. Compared to when Merrick had appeared and shocked everyone, Chen Zhao was different. Right now Merrick was in a very sorry state. The ground where Merrick landed cracked from the impact. 4 of the 8 arms on his back were broken. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao in shock. What had just happened? They were busy retreating, so they didn't see what had happened. Luzink looked at Chen Zhao. Sir, since you're strong enough, we should work together. Huh? Chen Zhao laughed mockingly. You clearly didn't plan to do that. Luzink had planned to use Chen Zhao as bait. Just because of this, they wouldn't be friends. In the business world, the concept of friend and enemy was very vague. But on the battlefield, enemies and friends could be instantly distinguished. Those who betrayed you once wouldn't be friends. No one was willing to fight alongside a traitor, because no one knew if the traitor would shoot them in the back. Of course, Chen Zhao had never wanted to be their friend. It was just a matter of who would betray first. Sir, if you can't be our comrade, then you can only be our enemy. Luzink was a decisive person. He wouldn't waste time and pretend to be polite. Are you sure it's good to add another enemy now? If I go to hell, Luzink said, I'll make all my enemies die with me. That's if you have the ability, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Without another word, Luzink raised his Desert Eagle and fired at Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao only used his index finger and thumb to pinch the bullet. This thing is useless against me. Chen Zhao casually tossed the bullet away. Everyone's expression changed again. Catching a bullet with his hand? How is that possible? What about this? Luzink suddenly tossed a grenade at Chen Zhao. Moreover, he had calculated the time of the explosion. The power of a high-explosive grenade was terrifying. This was no ordinary grenade. The radius of a normal grenade was only 4 meters. However, the radius of a high-explosive bomb was 12 meters. It wasn't just the difference in killing radius. At the same time, high-explosive bombs could instantly create super high temperatures. It could melt steel in an instant. Chen Zhao reached out and caught the bomb. The bomb exploded the moment Chen Zhao caught it. The high temperature engulfed Chen Zhao instantly. Unfortunately, a second later, when the flames dissipated, Chen Zhao was still standing there unscathed. Chen Zhao flipped his hand, and the melted metal shell flowed down his palm. It's not enough. What exactly are you? Luzink's expression was solemn. What you just said is a curse in my hometown. Luxon immediately changed his direction. This time, he took the initiative to lead the assault team into the encirclement. But the encirclement this time was different from the last time. Based on the IQ of these living corpses, they definitely understood Chen Zhao's threat. Most of the time, battles between intelligent creatures were not decided by pure force. Throughout history, most battles were actually won by the strong. It was just that these battles weren't recorded most of the time. On the other hand, the weak defeating the strong would be recorded in history. Merrick stood up again, a strange howl coming from his mouth. The gorilla monster and cadaver dog also turned to look at Chen Zhao. Sir, have fun. Luxon was rather proud. He felt that his plan had succeeded. Just by changing positions, the original enemies had turned to attack Chen Zhao. Let's go, Luxon ordered. He believed that the 3 monsters wouldn't attack them now. But before they could take a few steps, the gorilla monster descended from the sky and landed before them. Then Cadaver Hound, then Merrick. Fire! Fire at will. Luxon didn't hesitate. He ordered to attack the 3 monsters. Boom, boom, boom. Da-da-da. The gorilla monster and cadaver dog were instantly targeted. They couldn't resist in time. Plus, they were already injured. Under the crazy bombardment of the assault team, they were blown to pieces in the blink of an eye. Merrick, on the other hand, displayed his advantage. His defense was much stronger than the gorilla monster and cadaver dog. He charged into the assault team and slaughtered wantonly. In the end, however, a member of the assault team detonated a grenade in a suicidal manner. The suicide attack was successful, but it also affected a few members. A few more died. Now there were only 5 members left in the assault team. They could barely stand up. It seemed that these monsters weren't very evolved. Moreover, their intelligence had decreased to a certain extent. Suddenly, Chen Zhao sensed a terrifying danger. Almost instantly, Chen Zhao unleashed all his power. Clone, all returned to 1, dark assimilation giant. Boom! The entire city of New Orleans heard a huge explosion. A bright ball of fire shot into the sky. In the middle of the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge, there was a huge explosion on the artificial island. In an instant, the artificial island was blown to pieces. The terrifying impact also swept through the military checkpoint on the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge. The checkpoint was in a mess. Demi's head was bleeding from the impact. What happened? What happened? Demi looked at her messy subordinates. Just then she saw a bright light. When she saw the skyrocketing ball of fire in the middle of the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge, Demi's face paled. What's that? Sir. Immediately assessed the power of the explosion and the cause. The checkpoint was attacked, but it wasn't really damaged. There were no casualties. Moreover, the center of the explosion was in the middle of Lake Pontchartrain. Although there were huge waves, the waves had already weakened when they reached the shore. Sir, the cause of the explosion is unknown. The power of the explosion is equivalent to 5,000 tons of TN. The source should be under the artificial island. Demi felt her teeth ache. 5,000 tons. The nuclear explosion in Hiroshima was probably 20,000 tons. Now, such an accident had happened in her mission area. She could almost imagine what kind of accountability she would face. Right, that asterisk shoal seemed to be on the artificial island right now. There was no way he could survive that kind of explosion, right? Please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1661. Sir, we found someone on the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge. He's moving here. Demi picked up the binoculars. It was night, but Demi's binoculars were military and had night vision. Seeing the people on the bridge, Demi was unhappy. Fuck, he's not dead. The person Demi saw was none other than Chun Zhao. It was Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao's clothes were all torn. Chun Zhao also had lingering fear. If not for that sense of danger, Chun Zhao would probably be heavily injured now. Even so, Chun Zhao was still injured. The explosion just now was too sudden. It was too intense. The terrifying power was completely unimaginable. The entire artificial island had disappeared. To some extent, the explosion was even more destructive than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The two nuclear bombs had exploded in the sky, so the center of the explosion was actually in the sky. The real damage to Hiroshima and Nagasaki was the shockwave and the decades of nuclear pollution that followed. But the explosion had come from underground. Chun Zhao was basically standing in the center of the explosion. It was easy to imagine how good it felt. Anyway, Chun Zhao felt like he was ascending to heaven. But this also tested the upper limit of Chun Zhao's resistance. This explosion was almost Chun Zhao's upper limit. Just then a few military vehicles came over. Demi jumped down from the car. She looked at Chun Zhao with a complicated expression. On one hand, she wanted to know more about the artificial island from Chun Zhao. On the other hand, she felt pity that Chun Zhao didn't die on the island. Tell me what happened just now, Demi said, looking at Chun Zhao. You're asking me what happened? Demi asked, looking at Chun Zhao. You're asking me what happened? I'm asking you why there was such a huge explosion. If I was at the center of the explosion, I'd be a piece of meat now. Chun Zhao was furious. Where are my people? You think your people can survive? Chun Zhao sneered. Like him, they were all at the center of the explosion. Chun Zhao could survive because he was thick-skinned. How could those people survive? How did you survive? Because I'd already left the artificial island. Why did you leave? Of course. The problem's solved. Why should I stay on the island? This incident was obviously done by the mastermind behind the scenes. He was the evidence that wanted to destroy everything. But even Chun Zhao had to admit that he'd lost to such a big deal. Although Lake Pontchartrain was not the center of the city, however, due to its geographical location, the explosion at Lake Pontchartrain was too conspicuous. The people on both sides of the river were not blind. Demi looked at the furious Chun Zhao. She wanted to ask a few more questions, but Chun Zhao was extremely uncooperative. It was impossible for him to ask any more questions. Chun Zhao was in a bad mood. He pulled the driver out of the car and threw him on the ground. Then he drove away. Chun Zhao felt that he had suffered a great loss. He almost lost his life for $20 million. Even if he did nothing and lay at home for 10 days, he could earn $20 million. As expected, the military's employment was a scam. No matter what, He would never accept employment from the military again. Chen Zhao returned to the hotel dejectedly. Because of his disheveled appearance, he was stopped by the hotel lobby manager. If they weren't in public, Chen Zhao really wanted to beat him up so badly that even his mother wouldn't recognize him. The next day, knock knock knock, come in. Portia and Demi walked into Chen Zhao's room. Chen Zhao was still exercising in the morning. Portia looked like she had nothing left to live for. Mr. Chen, I want to know what happened last night. I don't know anything, Chen Zhao said, annoyed. Don't ask me. Ever since the explosion on the artificial island, Demi had been having a headache. The impact of this incident was too great. Even the White Palace said this morning that it was the work of terrorists. As for which organization it was, the White Palace said that they were still investigating. If the White Palace didn't know who did it, they had to ask someone who did. Demi was undoubtedly the most likely to know. After all, she was in charge of this operation. But honestly, Demi didn't know either. She felt that Chen Zhao might know, or he might have some clues. Even if she couldn't live under the same sky as Chen Zhao, she had to contact him now. She asked about what happened last night. Mr. Chen, this is your duty. Don't forget that you're hired by the military. I only promised to help you solve your problems. When did I promise to answer your questions? Chen Zhao asked casually as he ran on the treadmill. Then how do we know if Mr. Chen did anything? Forget it. Portia, go and order me breakfast. It's the same as yesterday. Portia also knew that Chen Zhao was purposely sending her away. Here's what happened last night. Chen Zhao started to explain the general situation. Of course, he didn't include some information. For example, Chen Zhao had the hard drive of the surveillance and the conflict between him and the commando team. Demi sighed. She could more or less tell whether Chen Zhao was telling the truth or not. Chen Zhao might not have told the whole truth, but most of it was probably true. As for the close cooperation with the commando team that Chen Zhao said, she definitely didn't believe it. The only thing she was sure of was that Chen Zhao really didn't know who the mastermind was. Okay, then I'll leave first. Demi glanced at Chen Zhao one last time, her eyes filled with viciousness. I hope we can work together again. There's definitely no chance. I'll never work with you, Chen Zhao roared. Get out of my room right now. Demi's lips curled into a smile. It was rare to see Chen Zhao lose his composure like this. He's not bad. Unfortunately, why didn't he die in the explosion last night? What a pity. Demi could only entertain herself now, because she knew very well. When she returned, she knew what kind of blame she would face. A while later, Portia returned to Chen Zhao's room. Boss, what exactly happened between you and Miss Demi? It's none of your business, Chen Zhao said in a bad mood. Don't ask what you shouldn't. Knowing too much won't do you any good. Breakfast was here. Chen Zhao treated the food as his enemies. Even Portia could feel that her boss's temper wasn't ordinary today. Chen Zhao thought of Sam and Vakari. He picked up the phone and called Sam. Sam, did you and Vakari find anything last night? No, sir. Fine, come to the hotel, Chen Zhao said unhappily. Chapter 1662. When Sam and Vakari came, they were all dispirited. Seeing Chen Zhao eating, all of his good moods were gone. Then look at the luxurious suite. Evil capitalism. Portia stood at the side and looked at Sam and Vakari in confusion. These two clearly weren't good people. How did the boss get involved with these people? Portia, give them $1,500 each. After a pause, Chen Zhao said, get them 2 more rooms in the hotel, and let them stay there for 10 days. Put all their normal expenses on my tab. Sir, we have a place to stay, Sam said, looking at Chen Zhao. It'll be convenient for you to come over immediately when I find you. Also go rest and go out at night. Sir, during the day. No need during the day. Night is fine. Also the pay doesn't change. Sam and Vakari had a place to stay, but it was basically a doghouse. There wasn't anything worth remembering. So Chen Zhao was willing to help them get a room at the Hilton Hotel. They were overjoyed. Plus, Chen Zhao had covered their expenses in the hotel. Please follow me, Portia said expressionlessly. Please come with me. A while later, Portia returned. Chen Zhao had only spoken a few words with Sam and Vakari. Portia was sure. These two were the hooligans on the streets. She didn't know what Chen Zhao's relationship with them was. However, the two rascals seemed to be working for Chen Zhao. She was also curious about what Chen Zhao would ask them for. Boss, the two of them have been settled. Yes. Boss, what's the plan today? Nothing, I'm tired. I'll rest at the hotel today. Chen Zhao waved his hand. Portia realized that when Chen Zhao didn't move, he was like a dead fish. He just lay on the cushion in front of the floor-to-ceiling window without moving. Chen Zhao didn't go out. Portia thought for a moment and said, Boss, can I ask for leave? I want to go home and take a look. Okay, go. Chen Zhao waved his hand. Chen Zhao hadn't been injured in a long time. But he was really injured last night. He'd been at the center of the explosion, so he'd received a huge impact. One had to know that the explosion last night had blown the entire artificial island away. From Demi, Chen Zhao learned that someone had buried thousands of tons of TN under the artificial island. And it wasn't a scattered burial. Instead, they were all concentrated together. It also instantly ignited thousands of tons of gunpowder. T of energy was released in an instant. Moreover, because it was underground, the energy generated by the explosion was also compressed. In modern firearms, there was a very important process, and that was explosive compression. The simplest example is bullet and shell casings. In the past, cannons and flintlocks were made by stuffing gunpowder directly into the barrel. In fact, a lot of the potential energy that could be released was wasted. But ever since the development of gunpowder sealing technology, the power of the guns and cannons increased exponentially. This was because the potential energy generated at the moment of the explosion needed to be released. If there wasn't enough space, the potential energy would destroy the container. If the strength of the container exceeded the potential energy would be compressed and explode again to produce an even more powerful potential energy. Fortunately, the explosion took place on an artificial island in Lake Pontchartrain, but the impact of the explosion only brought up the lake water. There were huge waves in the lake, but when the waves reached the shore, the potential energy would be exhausted. Chen Zhao was the one who suffered the most from the explosion. If Chen Zhao could escape the center of the explosion, he wouldn't have to be too far away. He just had to be more than 30 meters away. Although his injuries weren't serious, he wouldn't have been injured. But this also reminded Chen Zhao of something. Even if it wasn't a nuclear weapon, there was still something that could hurt him. Every country had a super bomb. What was a super bomb? It was an explosion that was close to a nuclear bomb, but a super weapon without radiation pollution. So, he had to be low-key when he needed to be. But while Chen Zhao was healing his injuries, Chen Zhao realized that his internal core had grown bigger again. The growth was even more obvious than in the past few days of cultivation. His small world expanded to 450 meters in diameter. The entire hotel was enveloped in Chen Zhao's small world. It didn't seem to be all bad. Chen Zhao muttered in his heart. Of course, he definitely couldn't do it again. Chen Zhao would rather choose a more rugged and troublesome training method. He didn't want to cultivate in such a suicidal way. Chen Zhao took a deep breath. Chen Zhao had never liked his non-elemental body, because he felt that the ability to summon the power of heaven and earth, and summon the wind and rain was truly awesome. He was on the same level as them. But this kind of transformation, that only allowed him to become bigger, was too lame. Most spiritualists of the strengthening element had spells that allowed them to enlarge their bodies. To put it bluntly, it was just Chen Zhao's own body. It would be best if Chen Zhao could have those cool and powerful spells. Of course, controlling the power of heaven and earth was undeniably powerful, both externally and internally. After Chen Zhao closed all the doors in the room, he used Doppelganger. 10,000 spells returned to 1, dark assimilation, and non-elemental enlargement again. Chen Zhao realized that the effects of dark assimilation seemed to have weakened. Of course, this weakening didn't mean that his strength had decreased, but the amplification ratio had decreased. But this was understandable. In the past, Chen Zhao had a destructive power of 100,000 tons. Now he had a destructive power of 1,000,000 tons. The amplification effect of dark assimilation wasn't as obvious as before. Of course, dark assimilation could increase Chen Zhao's own mass. It allowed Chen Zhao to release more potential energy every time he punched. The increase from non-elemental enlargement was the greatest. Chen Zhao even suspected that if he continued to grow so much, he would probably create a black hole. One day when he punched, would he create a black hole? Of course, this kind of thought was just a fantasy in his mind. According to scientific theory, the Earth had to be shrunk to the size of a coin to form a black hole. So Chen Zhao had to be trillions of times stronger to do it. By then, Chen Zhao would probably be able to shatter space. 1,000,000 tons of power might be strong enough for an individual creature. But compared to nature, it was still insignificant. Whoosh! Suddenly, Chen Zhao sensed Portia outside the door. He immediately removed the spell on him. Portia pushed the door open and saw Chen Zhao standing naked before the floor-to-ceiling window. Ah, pervert! Didn't you learn to knock before entering? Chen Zhao turned his head and glanced at Portia. What are you shouting for? I'm the one at a disadvantage, okay? Chapter 1663. Portia was completely speechless at her boss. She'd only gone out for a short while, and Chen Zhao was already naked when she came back. Did he have a habit of exposing himself? What's wrong? Didn't you ask for leave just now? Boss, can you lend me some money? Didn't you get a month's salary in advance? Portia hesitated, although she had an advance of a month's salary, but she also had a lot of debts. Okay, use my card if you want to buy anything, Chen Zhao said. Thank you, boss. Portia was overjoyed, but she still pretended to be reserved. Chen Zhao waved his hand and chased Portia out. Boss, your calf meat doesn't seem to be well proportioned. You should work on your calf meat. Chen Zhao looked at his calf. It didn't look that way. Anyway, he thought that his body was perfect. But the listener had ulterior motives. Ever since Portia said that, Chen Zhao felt more and more annoyed. It really was a bit uneven. Train some more. At noon, Chen Zhao felt bored. Sam, get Vicari up and take me out to dinner. Sam and Vicari were street thugs, but not everyone wanted such a carefree life. Many people were young and ignorant. When they grew up, they couldn't find decent jobs because of their criminal records. Many people were young and ignorant. When they became adults, they could not find a decent job because of their criminal records. Therefore, they still treasured this opportunity to help Chen Zhao. They didn't know what Chen Zhao wanted to do. They didn't know what he was going to do. They would do whatever Chen Zhao wanted them to do. They would do whatever Chen Zhao wanted them to do. Sam and Vicari finished packing and went to Chen Zhao's room. Let's go. Take me to a special restaurant. Chen Zhao tossed the car keys to Sam. The two became Chen Zhao's drivers. Billy, the Asian you mentioned, came out of the hotel, but he has 2 people with him. Follow them closely. I'll call them over now. Billy was still a student, but he was in the sports club and was quite popular in school. He usually attended all kinds of parties, so he knew many people. This time Billy asked for help. After a few calls, more than 10 students in school agreed to help. Anyway, they just had to cover their faces and beat someone up. It wasn't a big deal. He had to admit that the American kids were getting bolder and bolder. 10 minutes later, Billy's call came. Lowell, where are you right now? It's on Avenue Nova in the Northern French District. Head north, and you'll arrive at Raunchy Boulevard in 5 minutes. Just in time. We're also nearby. We'll be here soon. Keep up with us. Don't lose sight of us. Don't worry, I won't lose him. However, they were ultimately not professionals. Even Sam and Vicari realized that someone was following them. Moreover, there were quite a few of them. Sam and Vicari instantly tensed up. Sir, there are people following us, and there are quite a lot of them. What should we do? In order to see if it was an enemy of Chen Zhao's, or perhaps he was an assassin, Chen Zhao was expressionless. Lead them to a place with no one. Sir, I realize that there are a lot of them. It's fine, Chen Zhao said calmly. They're just kids. At this time, Vicari, who was sitting on the co-pilot's seat, opened the glove box. There was a pistol inside. Put the gun away, Chen Zhao said, frowning. We don't need it. Fine. Actually, the two didn't want to use a gun either. After all, things would become serious if they did. Sam drove the car to the suburban road. Okay, get off here, Chen Zhao said. Sam and Vicari were both nervous. Chen Zhao sat at the back of the car, looking very relaxed. Just then, 7 or 8 cars appeared behind them. More than 10 people got off. Sam and Vikari were a bit surprised. They really were a bunch of kids. Of course, the leader was Billy. Asian, you didn't expect this, right? You're in big trouble now. Big trouble? Chun Zhao sneered at Billy. Little guy, do you know what you're doing? Don't be reasonable. I'm going to beat you up today. You can try. Chun Zhao shrugged. Billy felt that since he was taller than Chun Zhao, he could definitely beat Chun Zhao. He didn't let the people behind him attack and charged at Chun Zhao. Sam and Vikari wanted to attack, but Chun Zhao waved his hand to stop them. Billy dashed to Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao didn't do anything. Billy raised his arm and punched Chun Zhao's face. Chun Zhao didn't even move his face. Is that all you have? Billy felt like he was punching a sheet of iron. But after being mocked by Chun Zhao, the young and hot-blooded Billy felt like his pride had been seriously trampled. Especially when he had a bunch of friends behind him. Nothing would embarrass him more than this. Billy landed another right hook on Chun Zhao's face. It's a bit itchy. Chun Zhao touched his cheek. You punched me twice. Now it's my turn. Puff, ugh. Billy covered his face. He opened his mouth and a few teeth fell out. I hit him. The university students behind them were already hungry. There were 3 things they had to experience in American universities: picking up girls, partying, and fighting. It wasn't like they hadn't experienced group fights before. One punch, another punch, and another punch. Chun Zhao saved himself a lot of trouble. He would just punch whoever came over. All of them were aimed at their chins. In less than a minute, everyone covered their mouths. Everyone's teeth had been broken by Chun Zhao. Sam and Vikari had been defeated by Chun Zhao before. They already knew that Chun Zhao was good at fighting, but they didn't expect Chun Zhao to beat more than 10 people down. Although they were still students, in fact they were already adults. Their combat power was stronger than Sam and Vikari's. They'd thought that Chun Zhao would lose, but they didn't expect that they couldn't even touch Chun Zhao. Of course, that wasn't accurate. After all, Chun Zhao had purposely taken 2 punches from Billy. Can you find more people next time? I wasn't in a good mood today, but I feel much better now. Thank you. Billy was seething with anger, but the situation was stronger than him. He didn't expect Chun Zhao to be so good at fighting. One had to know that some of the people who came with him were boxers. After mocking Billy for a while, Chun Zhao called Sam and Vikari to leave. Sir, it's too easy for them to let them go, Sam said. The leader is Portia's brother. No wonder. Chapter 1664. In the evening, Chun Zhao returned to the hotel. Then, he saw Portia rush into his room with a dark expression. Miss Portia, what's wrong? Did you hit my brother? Portia demanded. Yes. Is there a problem? Why did you hit my brother? He's a kid. Looks like you have some misunderstanding about the word kid. Chun Zhao sneered at Portia. I don't think he told you the truth. Maybe I should have called the police. Attacking and kidnapping a billionaire might make him sober for a few years. Chun Zhao looked up at Portia. Her expression turned into one of panic. Do you have any more questions? Boss, I'm sorry. I misunderstood the truth. Misunderstood? Okay, don't be so impulsive next time, Chun Zhao said calmly. Also, you better tell your brother not to do this anymore. Otherwise, I'll tie him to a rocket and send him into space. Trust me, I have enough money to complete this journey. Even if his destination is Mars, I can do it, let alone the atmosphere. That's right, Chun Zhao said calmly. Portia was so scared that she broke out in cold sweat. She'd really been tricked by Billy this time. But she also blamed herself for being too rash. He had actually believed Billy's words because he was biased. Plus, Chun Zhao was her boss. His background was also unknown. Chun Zhao's tone seemed calm, but a few words scared her quite a bit. Anything else? No, nothing. Order dinner for me, Chun Zhao said. Boss, how much? 10 is enough. I ate a little today, so I'm not hungry. 10 servings? You call this not very hungry? I'll be damned if I believe you. A while later, dinner was delivered. While eating, Chun Zhao called and video chatted with his 2 babies. Baby, are you done eating? Yeah. Dad, when are you coming back? Soon. The call wasn't short. It lasted until Jerlin was called to dinner by Fei Lai. Then Fei Lai started kissing Chen Zhao again. After dinner, Portia asked, "Boss, are you going out tonight?" Chen Zhao had gone out for the past 2 nights. But Portia didn't know what he was going to do at night. In any case, they were all very mysterious. Portia guessed in her heart. Was Chen Zhao doing something illegal outside? But she couldn't care less. Portia felt that she was just an ordinary personal assistant. If Chen Zhao's tone was a little harsh, she would give in. In any case, when she was free, Portia would let her imagination run wild. For example, they guessed that Chen Zhao was smuggling firearms or selling drugs. "No, I'll stay in the hotel tonight. Is there anything you need me to do?" "No, I'll call you if I need anything. Go back to your room." Portia felt that Chen Zhao was going to start running naked again. That was indeed the case. In a suite of the same hotel, there was a woman stomping her foot in anger. Damn it, that feeling is coming again. Feline had been studying and practicing magic in the hotel for the past 2 days. But he didn't know what was going on today. Elemental exhaustion had occurred several times in the vicinity. Of course, elemental exhaustion only lasted for a dozen or so seconds. However, those 10 seconds had given Fu Lin a lot of trouble. The spell she'd been practicing recently was continuous and couldn't be interrupted. But because of the elemental exhaustion, the spell was interrupted for no reason. It would be fine if it was only once or twice. But it started happening in the morning and happened more than a dozen times. The entire process took about an hour. Then it went back to normal. But at night, the same thing happened again. Even if it wasn't elemental magic, many spells still needed magic to connect with the elements in the outside world. If it was an elemental vacuum, many spells would fail. Feline tried again, but not long after, the elemental exhaustion happened again. Feline didn't understand what was going on either. Could it be that someone was purposely causing this phenomenon of elemental depletion? Impossible. He'd never heard of anyone who could cause this kind of elemental exhaustion. It was like creating an absolute vacuum in a space. With the current technology, it was impossible to do so. If it was a small space in a lab, it could be done. But it couldn't be done in a large space. Not to mention an open space like this. I want to see who's behind this. As he spoke, Feline's eyes suddenly turned golden. Feline started to look around. The golden eyes were called spiritual vision. They could see the source of mana. As long as the mana source was within a certain range, it could be sensed. Suddenly, Feline saw a giant on the 20th floor. Huh. Chen Zhao was surprised. Someone was observing him. Shadow vision also sensed Feline's presence. The two sensed each other at the same time, and realized that the other had already noticed them. There was actually another spiritualist in the building. The spiritualist seemed to live on the same floor as Portia. Chen Zhao put away his spell, changed his clothes, and went downstairs. Knock knock. Chen Zhao knocked on the door. Feline opened the door and studied him. "Please come in, sir." Chen Zhao walked in. Feline was still studying him. "Sir, I'm Feline. May I ask how I should address you?" "My surname is Chen." "Mr. Chen, I'm curious. How did you sense me?" Feline asked. The moment Feline saw Chen Zhao sensed that he was being watched. "I have a special ability. I can sense any line of sight that is focused on me." "I see." Feline didn't continue asking. "Mr. Chen, are you a local spiritualist in New Orleans?" "No, you're a local." "I'm not either. I have business in New Orleans." Feline didn't elaborate. Chen Zhao was a bit disappointed. But since Feline was staying in a hotel, he probably wasn't a local spiritualist. He'd thought that he'd found the organization, but it wasn't a local spiritualist. "Can I ask why you came to New Orleans?" Chen Zhao asked. Feline looked up at Chen Zhao. "Mr. Chen, do you have any objections?" "I don't have any objections," Chen Zhao said. "I want to find the White Spear Society in New Orleans, but I can't find anyone." Chen Zhao told Feline his goal, mainly because he wanted Feline to know a local spiritualist. It would be best if he was from the White Spear Society. That would save him a lot of trouble. "You're also here for the White Spear Society." Chapter 1665. Feline stared at Chen Zhao in shock. However, there was wariness in her eyes. Chen Zhao met Feline's gaze. With some hesitation he asked, "You too?" What's your relationship with the White Spear Society? Nothing. Chen Zhao wasn't sure why Feline was wary of him. Were Feline and the White Spear Society friends or foes? Feline wouldn't believe Chen Zhao. He'd come to New Orleans to find the White Spear Society. Nothing to say. If I'm related, I should go to the White Spear Society directly instead of waiting here, Chen Zhao said. Feline stood there in silence. She wasn't sure if she should believe him. After a while Feline said, "No need. You won't find them." "You know about the White Spear Society?" "Yes, but I won't say," Feline said indifferently. Chen Zhao was helpless too. Feline wasn't willing to say. He couldn't force her. However, Chen Zhao felt that there was more to Feline's words. "Since that's the case, we have nothing to talk about. Goodbye. Mr. Chen, I'm curious. How did you deplete the surrounding elements?" Feline hadn't forgotten her main reason for meeting Chen Zhao. To her, Chen Zhao's spell wasn't useless. However, it wasn't very useful either. Its biggest use was to counter elemental spells. She was more curious about Chen Zhao. Depletion of elements? Chen Zhao froze. But then he understood. She was talking about his non-elemental body. However, as the perpetrator, Chen Zhao was a bit slow to realize. After all, Chen Zhao had absorbed the elements into his body. The elements from the outside world would quickly fill the vacuum zone. So, Chen Zhao didn't notice the vacuum zone he'd created. Or rather, he noticed it but didn't take it to heart. After all, it didn't affect him at all. Chen Zhao thought hard for the entire day. He gave the non-elemental giant a new name, Giant Miracle God. Chen Zhao thought that the name was pretty good. "Why should I tell you?" Chen Zhao looked at Feline with a smile. Since she wasn't willing to share information about the White Spear Society with him, then he wouldn't share his ability with her generously. "Fine, Mr. Chen, please leave." Feline asked Chen Zhao to leave. Chen Zhao didn't continue pestering her. He turned and left Fu Lin's room. Chen Zhao returned to his room. However, Chen Zhao was still monitoring Feline. She was unwilling to tell him about the White Spear Association. Couldn't he think of a way himself? However, Feline was still very careful. He didn't leave until 2 in the morning. Chen Zhao also followed them out of the hotel. Fu Lin was driving the car on the empty street. She felt that something was wrong. She didn't know why, but she just felt that something was wrong. But what exactly was wrong? She couldn't put her finger on it. Was he being followed? Fu Lin stopped the car and opened his spiritual vision. She glanced around and found no source of magic power within several kilometers. Feline heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had been overly cautious. It was probably because of the small conflict with Chen Zhao. Let her be vigilant. In fact, Fu Lin had overlooked something. In the sky, several hundred meters above Feline, Chen Zhao had been following him silently. Perhaps it was because he had investigated once and found nothing. Fu Lin's mood also relaxed. Fu Lin came to a beach that hadn't been developed before. After walking around the beach, Fu Lin stopped in front of a rock that was as tall as a person. There was a red engraving on the rock. It should be some kind of magic rune. Fu Lin cautiously used his spiritual vision to look around. Only then did he send magic power into the rune. The rune suddenly exploded with a beam of light, shooting straight at the control center. The rune was imprinted on the clouds in the sky, but by now, it was already very faint. A normal person wouldn't be able to see the rune imprinted on the clouds. Chen Zhao was still hiding in the sky. Chen Zhao analyzed that it should be some kind of message. But after waiting for a long time, Fu Lin was a bit impatient. Strange, why isn't he here yet? Fu Lin waited for a long time, but the person she was waiting for still didn't come. The wind that had been blowing on the beach for more than an hour had disappeared. Fu Lin was finally sure that the person she was waiting for wouldn't come. Fu Lin's expression was a bit ugly, even a bit heavy. Chen Zhao was also a bit disappointed. Fu Lin had been in the sea breeze for more than an hour. Chen Zhao was the same. Why didn't the person Fu Lin was looking for appear? Logically speaking, she'd already sent the signal, so the person should be here. After Fu Lin left, Chen Zhao landed on the beach. Looking at the rock before him, Chen Zhao also tried to send magic power into it. Unfortunately, activating the rune seemed to require a special method. Chen Zhao couldn't activate the rune, so he could only leave resentfully. Fu Lin returned to the hotel and subconsciously used her spiritual vision to observe Chen Zhao's room. He's not in the room. Fu Lin frowned. Where did he go? Hi, Miss Fu Lin. Just then, Chen Zhao walked in from the hotel door. Mr. Chen, are you going out so late? Fu Lin looked at Chen Zhao meaningfully. I'm hungry. Unfortunately, the hotel doesn't provide supper. Chen Zhao shrugged. Fu Lin watched Chen Zhao's back as he left. She was a bit suspicious that Chen Zhao hadn't been following her, but she couldn't find any evidence. Plus, she'd checked with her spiritual vision just now. Indeed, there were no signs of anyone following her. She was very confident in her spiritual vision. Ever since she'd learned it, she'd never made a mistake. She also didn't believe that her spiritual vision, which had always worked, would make a mistake on Chen Zhao. Fu Lin's heart jumped. She used her spiritual vision to check on Chen Zhao again. She discovered that Chen Zhao's magic source was very weak. It seemed to be a tiny spot on his abdomen, but she could indeed see it. Was she really thinking too much? Fu Lin wasn't sure. Chen Zhao could already feel Fu Lin's strange gaze. But Chen Zhao still didn't show it. Both sides knew that there was something wrong, but neither made it public. Fu Lin shook her head. She had a lot on her mind and couldn't pay attention to Chen Zhao. She'd been in New Orleans for quite some time. She'd found a few magic runes in New Orleans and activated them to send a message to the White Spear Society. But the White Spear Society still didn't reply. This made her heart heavier. Had something really happened to them? She'd rushed to New Orleans after receiving the White Spear Society's distress message. But after arriving, she still couldn't contact the White Spear Society. Thus, Fu Lin couldn't get over it. She was also wary of Chen Zhao, who'd suddenly appeared. Chapter 1666. The next morning, Portia was preparing breakfast for Chen Zhao. Sam and Vicari were back. Sir, we still didn't find anything last night. Okay, Chen Zhao said. Go get something to eat and then rest. Then we'll go find food first. Sam and Vicari had been monitoring Chen Zhao for the whole night and were very tired. Halfway through, Chen Zhao suddenly stopped. Portia looked at Chen Zhao's paws. He thought maliciously, is this guy choking? Chen Zhao suddenly started eating again. Portia sighed inwardly. Portia, are you cursing me in your heart? No. Portia was flustered and terrified at the same time. How did he know what she was thinking? Do you know reporters? Chen Zhao asked. Portia was still thinking about how to explain to Chen Zhao. The next second, Chen Zhao changed the topic. Reporters. Local reporters in New Orleans. No. I'll go to Los Angeles after graduation. Can you contact reporters from the local TV stations or newspapers in New Orleans? Boss, why do you need reporters? It was possible to contact him, but without a reason, Portia didn't know how to contact him. She couldn't call them and say, hey, my boss wants to see you. They'd think she was crazy. Help me get a few anonymous bank cards, Chen Zhao said. Deposit $50,000, $100,000 and $500,000. Also get me some cash. How much cash? $200,000 is enough. And then give $10,000 to any reporter who's willing. If you can find the boss or editor of the newspaper, give them $100,000. If it's not enough, give them $200,000. If it's not enough, give them $500,000. Portia looked at Chen Zhao as if he was crazy. Under what name? Didn't I say that I'll give $10,000 to any reporter who's willing? No other reason. Portia was so angry that she couldn't say anything. Which media do I need to contact? Both TV stations and newspapers, Chen Zhao said. Okay, I'll try. Portia had no choice but to go to a local newspaper first. The newspaper had some local reputation. However, the sales volume was not high. The circulation of each issue was only about 10,000 copies. Hello, who are you looking for? I'm looking for the chief editor of your newspaper, said Portia. May I ask who you are? Do you have an appointment with the managing editor? No, but I believe your chief editor will see me. Portia tried her best to remain calm and spoke as haughtily as possible. The receptionist looked at Portia and didn't dare to underestimate her. He picked up the phone and dialed the chief editor's internal line. He explained the situation here once more. Not long after, A man in his 50s walked out. I'm Hamson, the chief editor here. Who are you? Hamson studied Portia. He was sure he didn't know her. However, Portia's lofty attitude made him appear rather cautious. Mr. Hamson, can we talk in your office? Hamson thought for a moment, then nodded and said, please. When they reached the office, Hamson couldn't help but take the initiative to ask, Miss, how should I address you? You can call me Portia. Portia took out a bank card. This is an anonymous bank card, with $100,000 in it. The password is 123456. Hamson's eyelids twitched. He didn't take the card. Miss Portia, what do you mean? My boss wants to see you. He said that as long as you're willing to see him, this card is yours. Your boss? Yes. Who's your boss? A rich man. Hamson was a little hesitant. Even though he was the chief editor of the newspaper, his annual income was only about $60,000. The money in this card was almost equivalent to 2 years of his income. It would be a lie to say he wasn't tempted. However, he was a little worried. He didn't know who the person was, and what request he would make. What does your boss want from me? I think he wants you to publish some news. I don't know the details. Just publish some news? It didn't seem difficult. However, Hamson still didn't agree immediately. If your boss wants to publish an advertisement, he can contact the advertising department of our newspaper. I don't know what the boss wants. I'm just here as he asked. Where does your boss live? At the Hilton Hotel. Isn't your boss a local from New Orleans? No. Hamson was initially worried that they would meet in some remote place. If it was such a place, Hamson would never go there. Since it was at the Hilton Hotel, it shouldn't be dangerous. Okay. Hamson finally nodded. He looked at the bank card in Portia's hand, but didn't take it. Portia stuffed the card into his hand. By the way, do you know the director or boss of the TV station? Portia asked. An hour later, in Hamson's office, his expression was a little stiff. He had called his old friend Leberg over. But Portia had given him $100,000. Leberg didn't accept it, so Portia changed another bank card for $200,000. Leberg still didn't accept it, so Portia gave him another bank card for $500,000. He asked to meet Portia's boss at the Hilton Hotel. Hamson was a little regretful. He felt like he'd agreed too easily. If he'd been more reserved, could he have asked for a higher price? Leberg gave in. He was the director of the TV station. However, he was the manager, not the boss. He could be considered a rich man, but definitely not a tycoon. Under Portia's money attack, he quickly laid down his arms and surrendered. Portia brought the two to the Hilton Hotel. Portia didn't know what was wrong with him. However, it was the happiest time she'd ever spent money in her life. It wasn't her money either. She didn't feel any pain at all. She also didn't want to help Chen Zhao save money. Anyway, according to Chen Zhao's request, she just had to throw money at him. If he didn't agree, she would throw money again. Portia suddenly liked her job a little. No, more accurately, she liked the thrill of spending money. She finally understood how rich people felt. Boss, the person you're looking for is here. Chapter 1667. Both Leberg and Hamson were surprised to see Chen Zhao. They didn't expect him to be Asian. This is Mr. Hamson, the chief editor of New Orleans Pioneer newspapers. This is Mr. Leberg, the chairman of New Orleans Channel. Sir, why are you looking for us? Hamson asked. Chen Zhao looked at Portia. Seeing his gaze, Portia knew that he was going to kick her out again. She was curious about what Chen Zhao wanted to say to them. However, she still turned around and left dutifully. Close the door too. Portia really wanted to say that she wasn't his maid. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao didn't give her the chance. Mr. Hamson, Mr. Leberg, I'd like you to help me publish a piece of news on your media outlets. Of course, it's for a fee. What is it? Have you heard about the haunted toll station on the Seabrook Coastal Highway? Chen Zhao asked. Both of them were in the media industry. Of course, they'd heard about it. However, they didn't understand what Chen Zhao meant. Sir, I don't understand, Hamson said. What does this have to do with what you're saying? I want you to publish this piece of news and say that someone was attacked and died here. You want to use this to create social panic. Leberg asked, frowning. No, I have my own purpose. I refuse, Leberg said firmly. I definitely won't publish such irresponsible fake news. $1 million, Chen Zhao said. Leberg hesitated. 2 million. Leberg hesitated. 5 million. Mr. Chen, you have to understand that we have to bear a huge risk for this kind of news. Leberg's eyes flashed. The door is over there, Chen Zhao said calmly. I'll find a few big TV stations. What a joke. $5 million was nothing to him. Who did he think he was? It was just a small local TV station. The New Orleans channel's market value wasn't even 10 million. He'd already offered 5 million, but Chen Zhao was still asking for more. Leberg immediately felt awkward. Mr. Chen, I've actually heard about this before, he said awkwardly. I think we should film some footage to ensure the authenticity of the news. Hampson glanced at his old friend. What an unprincipled old man. Mr. Chen, I'm not asking for much. $2 million. I'll give you a big page to publish this news for 3 consecutive days. Sure. Chen Zhao didn't bargain. But I want this to blow up as much as possible. The more people know, the better. Of course. I hope that no one else knows the truth apart from the two of you. I understand. They accepted Chen Zhao's money, reporting false news. If this matter were to be known by others, it would be even worse for them. Chen Zhao would be fine, but they would definitely be in big trouble. Portia, come in. Portia pushed the door open and came in. Boss, get 2 anonymous bank cards. One for $5 million USD, and the other for $2 million USD. Portia glanced at the 2 old men. It seemed that they had reached an agreement. Although he did not know the specific content of their conversation. But one thing was certain. The content of their conversation would definitely appear on tomorrow's news. This was also Chen Zhao's idea. If Sam and Vicari didn't find out, then he would purposely create a supernatural incident to attract spiritualists. Of course, if it was just a rumor like before, it might not attract spiritualists. But if it appeared on the news, the local spiritualists would definitely know about it. Chen Zhao's price was not just for small local TV stations and newspapers. He could even bribe a first-tier media company. But it wouldn't benefit Chen Zhao. After all, he wanted to attract the local spiritualists in New Orleans. Not all the spiritualists in America. Of course, if this still didn't work, then Chen Zhao had a third move. Of course, the second move was already quite bad. Chen Zhao really didn't want to use the third move. Chen Zhao was waiting for news now. Boss, there's a gym in the hotel. You can go there to work out. You don't have to work out in your room every day. There's a gym in the hotel? Chen Zhao had just found out. Then come with me to the gym. Portia didn't want to go, but she had no choice. Since Chen Zhao had asked, she could only go. Actually, Portia wasn't bad looking. She couldn't be said to be devastatingly beautiful, but her looks were above average. She just didn't care about her appearance all day. Her hair was tied up, and she wore thick glasses. She forcefully dressed herself up as one of the 3 unattractive women. Actually, if one thought about it, a woman who wanted to develop in Hollywood, how could her looks be too bad? Plus, Chen Zhao had looked at her with Portia's glasses before. Her glasses were flat glass. They weren't high-resolution glasses at all. Chen Zhao guessed that she was trying to prevent workplace harassment. But Chen Zhao really didn't expect it. Portia, who was usually wrapped up tightly, was now in a daze. She looked so well dressed after putting on sportswear. As Chen Zhao moved the dumbbells up and down, he studied Portia. Portia, do you not have money to buy clothes? How about I sponsor you, and you change into your usual clothes? If Portia could dress herself up a little every day, Chen Zhao would look good too. No need. Portia turned her head away with a dark expression. Also, what you said is harassment. I have the right to sue you. Fine, fine. Chen Zhao shrugged helplessly. At this moment, a burly man walked over. Hi, miss. Do you need to know more about fitness? I'm the fitness instructor here. The man's eyes were a little dishonest. No need, Portia said in annoyance. The burly man turned to Chen Zhao. Miss, can this Asian satisfy you? Chen Zhao was instantly enraged. He threw the dumbbells down. Gorilla, do you need a beating? Skinny monkey, are you talking to me? Other than you, which gorilla is here? The burly man looked at Chen Zhao with a hideous expression. All his muscles bulged and his chest muscles bounced. Did you inject cholesterol into your brain? So your brain is filled with hardened cholesterol? Usually, only those who were born muscular like Gaia would go to the gym. Most people only got huge muscles by injecting cholesterol. However, it was too insulting to say that in front of a fitness expert. Kid, do you think I won't twist your head off? Can you do it? Chapter 1668. Boss, forget it. Portia looked at the burly man. Worried that Chen Zhao would be at a disadvantage, she pulled him. Chen Zhao's figure was not bad, but it was far from the bodybuilder's. Chen Zhao's thighs weren't even as thick as the man's arms. It wasn't a wise choice to have a conflict here. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao was never a coward when it came to fighting, especially when this bodybuilder was mocking him. Little monkey, go back to your mother's arms and drink milk. Chen Zhao looked at the burly man. Is your grandmother in the gym? The man didn't react in time. Portia covered her head. It seemed that this conflict was unavoidable. The burly man finally understood. He flew into a rage and charged at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao caught the man's fists with both hands. Walking cholesterol, is that all you have? Chen Zhao looked at the man mockingly. Ah! The man roared. His veins bulged all over his body as he stared at Chen Zhao with a savage expression. But Chen Zhao looked unperturbed. Come on, use more strength. Are you using all your strength on women? The man's tendons were really about to explode. But the nature of the two was different. The burly man couldn't take it anymore. The fat content of sports athletes was generally around 3%. The fat content of athletes in endurance events was even higher, around 4% to 5%. Body fat meant a person's endurance. For example, the burly man injected steroids into his body. It would indeed make his muscles look exaggerated in a short time, but it would also make his body fat drop to the extreme, possibly below 1%. With this kind of muscle index, a person who knew how to explode could reach the world record level in a short time. But the burly man was clearly someone who only knew how to work out. Chen Zhao used some strength in his arms and pushed forward. The burly man fell 2 meters away. Chen Zhao clapped his hands. Weakling. Portia was a bit shocked. Was this burly man an actor that Chen Zhao had hired? Normally the burly man would win for sure. How did Chen Zhao defeat him so easily? Just then, a slim and beautiful figure appeared before Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was surprised to see Feline here again. Hee. Mr. Chen, we meet again. Chen Zhao whistled. Miss Feline, you have a great body. Feline looked at the big guy on the ground. Mr. Chen, do you feel any sense of accomplishment bullying a weakling like this? Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes. Was Feline provoking him? Mr. Chen, I also practice martial arts. How about we have a match? You. Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at Feline. Are you sure? Of course, there's a boxing ring over there. Chen Zhao really couldn't tell that Feline was an enhancer. However, there were many types of enhancers. Chen Zhao didn't see much explosive power from Feline's muscles. Was she a speed type? However, since Fu Lin had already issued a challenge, Chen Zhao wouldn't refuse either. Miss, you'd better not fight with my boss. He beat that big guy to the ground. Portia felt that Chen Zhao was probably very good at fighting. Otherwise, he wouldn't have defeated the big guy, even though he didn't have an advantage in size. Feline looked at Portia and smiled. She didn't think Chen Zhao could defeat her. The two went to the boxing ring. Put on your equipment in case you get hurt, Chen Zhao said. Since you don't need it, I won't either, Feline said, smiling faintly. Chen Zhao looked at Feline and took a deep breath. Fine, you attack first. Feline suddenly revealed a strange smile. In an instant, she turned into a blur and charged before Chen Zhao. Fast. Very fast. Chen Zhao was surprised. Was this woman a speed type? Bang! Feline punched Chen Zhao's cheek. So strong. Chen Zhao tilted his head slightly. Speed and strength? Chen Zhao found it hard to believe. Even Chen Zhao was good at strength. Speed was an added bonus. The increase in his constitution naturally increased his speed. What Chen Zhao grew the fastest was still his strength. From a normal person to now, his strength had increased by more than 1,000,000 times. However, Chen Zhao's speed had only increased by a few hundred times. The difference was obvious. But Feline's speed and strength were very close. Of course, Feline's speed and strength were far from Chen Zhao's. Portia was shocked. She couldn't tell what was going on. She didn't know that Feline's speed was completely illogical. She only knew that Chen Zhao had been beaten. Beaten by Feline. Feline took a few steps back. How is it? Do you still think I need to wear equipment? Chen Zhao stroked his hair, a faint smile on his face. You've indeed exceeded my expectations, but you can try again. I didn't use my full strength just now. Feline looked at Chen Zhao, even though it was only a brief contact. Although it was only a brief contact, she could tell that Chen Zhao's defense was very outstanding. Just now, 30% of her strength had only made him tilt his head slightly. That was 1,000 kilograms of strength. Feline wasn't a pure strength type or speed type. She wasn't even a true strength type. But she believed that no strength type in the same level could match her. Because her magic system was very special. She was a conversion type. If she wanted to, she could use magic to convert. For example, through conversion, she could instantly reach superhuman speed and terrifying strength. Of course, such conversion couldn't reach the absolute level of a spiritualist. However, she was able to win through the difference in comparison. Just like a famous person once said, "No one in the directing circle can act better than me. No one in the actor circle can sing better than me. No one in the singer circle can direct better than me." Perhaps she couldn't reach the best in all aspects, but she could win through difference on the battlefield. If Chen Zhao was good at speed, she would convert to strength and defense. If Chen Zhao was good at strength, she would convert to speed. Therefore, she was naturally undefeatable. It wasn't impossible for Chen Zhao to beat her. Chen Zhao was much stronger than her. But Feline didn't think that Chen Zhao could do it. She was the top genius in North America. She'd once visited Dragon Tiger Mountain Taoism and met the Supreme Heavenly Master, Zhang Tianyi. Not only had Zhang Tianyi given her pointers, but he'd also intended to take her as a disciple. Feline didn't dare to say that she was undefeatable among her peers, but at least Zhang Tianyi's disciples could spar with her. However, after experiencing the Eastern supernatural world, Fu Lin's horizons had been broadened. She didn't think that anyone in the North American supernatural world could compare to her. Chapter 1669. For the first time, Feline didn't use her full strength. It was mainly to test Chen Zhao's strength. But after some contact, she could basically confirm that Chen Zhao mainly focused on defense. After all, she had used a lot of strength just now. But Chen Zhao wasn't affected by her punch at all. Feline thought that Chen Zhao mainly focused on defense. Feline crooked her finger. Come, you'll be the main attacker this time. Otherwise you won't have a chance to attack. I can't attack. Say that again when you can break through my defense. Chen Zhao snickered. Like Feline, Chen Zhao felt that he was undefeatable. On the battlefield, if a person couldn't hurt his enemy, then the enemy was already undefeatable. Portia saw Chen Zhao get hit. She was actually quite happy. Finally, someone could teach this arrogant guy a lesson. The big guy was different from Feline. When the big guy attacked Chen Zhao, Portia was worried that Chen Zhao would get hurt. On the other hand, Fu Lin attacking Chen Zhao was very satisfying. Feline looked at Chen Zhao. She had rich battle experience. In terms of strength, she rarely met a match. That was why the White Spear Gang had asked her for help. She had probably guessed Chen Zhao's thoughts. Chen Zhao probably thought that since she couldn't break his defense, he was undefeatable. The corners of Fu Lin's mouth formed an arc. It seemed that she had to teach him a lesson. She had to make him put away his ignorant thoughts. Chen Zhao realized that Feline's aura had changed. It seemed like she was going to get serious. Whoosh, Feline suddenly moved. She was so fast that it was suffocating. But in Chen Zhao's eyes, her speed was no different from a movie in slow motion. Chen Zhao tilted his head back. Feline realized that her attack had missed. He could actually dodge her attack. Feline immediately changed to a left hook. But this time, Chen Zhao's body leaned forward and Feline's fist flew past his head. Feline's expression darkened. She raised her leg and kicked at Chen Zhao's crotch. They didn't agree to only use fists anyway. Chen Zhao finally punched. Feline's mouth was wide open. Her eyeballs were about to fall out. She felt that her stomach was about to be torn apart. Holding her stomach, Feline knelt on the ground. I'm sorry. Did I go too hard? Chen Zhao looked down at Feline from above. At this moment, Feline only felt grief and resentment. He should not have held back just now. This damn fellow actually pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. Miss, are you alright? Portia was very disappointed. She had thought that Chen Zhao would be at a disadvantage. In the end, Feline was punched in the stomach. Portia glanced at Chen Zhao, who was walking down the stage, with a resentful expression. This guy was too much. How could he be so heavy-handed towards a lady? He really didn't have the slightest bit of gentlemanly demeanor. Feline's expression was extremely ugly. She really couldn't stand up now. Moving her palm away, Portia saw that Feline's abdomen had turned black. Portia found a spray and sprayed it on Fu Lin's abdomen. Miss, can you walk now? I'm fine. I'm sorry, my boss has gone too far, Portia said indignantly. She was completely on Feline's side. Chen Zhao didn't care what Portia thought. Fu Lin was very depressed. She was the one who started the fight. In the end, she was the one who was beaten down. In the end, the assistant even pitied him. Chen Zhao had already left the arena. He found a treadmill and ran. He didn't care what Portia thought. Plus, his relationship with Feline wasn't something Portia could understand. They weren't exactly enemies, but they weren't friends either. If Chen Zhao didn't want to use Feline to find someone, Chen Zhao would make sure that this woman who provoked him couldn't get up again. Aren't you afraid that your boss will give you trouble for helping me? Feline asked. He won't care about me, Portia said unconcerned. Feline secretly used his spiritual vision to observe Portia. She was just an ordinary person. By the way, why did you come to New Orleans? I came with the boss, Portia said. Who knows what he's going to do? What do you mean? The second day my boss came, he wanted me to take him to the cemetery. Then he had nothing to do the whole day. Portia shook her head. She had thought about it, but she still couldn't figure out what Chen Zhao wanted to do. The boss seems to be looking for something in New Orleans. What? I don't know. He won't tell me either. Feline knew that Portia definitely didn't know much. However, she still didn't completely believe it. Who knew if Chen Zhao had purposely arranged for Portia to mislead her? Plus, she already knew that Chen Zhao was looking for the White Spear Society. By the way, what does your boss do? I don't know. I only know that he's rich. I've been working for him for less than a week. Fu Lin thought a lot, and Portia walked her to the door. What a coincidence. You live on this floor too. I live in that room. Yeah, what a coincidence. Feline forced a smile. If you need anything, remember to call me. I'll be happy to help. Okay, thank you. Feline returned to her room. Suddenly her expression changed. Who? She found traces of magic power in her room. Someone was using magic in her room. Feline walked forward cautiously. Come out. At that moment, a thick mist suddenly sprayed out from the mirror in the bathroom. The thick fog quickly gathered to form a woman. However, the woman seemed to be heavily injured. As soon as she appeared, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Kajia. Feline's expression changed. He hurriedly helped Kajia. What's wrong? Kajia's body swayed and she fainted. Feline hurriedly helped Kajia to the bed and examined her. Convert mana. Feline first converted his own mana, so that he could cast water magic. Spring of life. Please heal the wounds of the person before you. The spring of life wasn't enough to heal her injuries. In fact, she was still unconscious. Feline's heart was heavy. What exactly happened to Kajia? She was actually so heavily injured. Feline used the spring of life a few more times, but the effects weren't as good as the first time. There was a special magical power in Kajia's body that suppressed the spring of life's effects to the minimum. At the same time, it was also this magical power that worsened Kajia's injuries. Kajia finally woke up in the evening. Feline. She was very weak now. How are you now, Kajia? Feline. White Spear Association is finished. White Spear Association is completely destroyed. Kajia lost control of her emotions and collapsed. Kajia, don't cry. Tell me what happened. Chapter 1670. Dead, they're all dead. Kajia sobbed. But she was very weak at the moment. Agitated, she spat out a mouthful of blood. How is that possible? Feline was shocked. The White Spear Association is so powerful. How? We were betrayed. Our leader, the White Radiance, betrayed us all. The more Katia spoke, the more agitated she became. She gathered us together and ambushed the chief protector. Then the Satanists appeared. How is that possible? How is that possible? Lady Aimsha is the founder of the White Spear Association. How could she? Feline could not believe that the White Radiance, Lady Aimsha, was a traitor. This was too much of a shock for her. That traitor? She is sisters with the leader of the Satanists, Roy. This is all a conspiracy, 100% conspiracy. Katia was shocked once again. Aimsha and Roy were sisters. I want revenge. I want revenge. 2 streaks of blood flowed down Katia's cheeks. She shed tears of blood. Feline's mind was in a mess. She was frightened by Katia's words. The White Spear Association was destroyed. Amesh's betrayal. Aimsha and Roy were sisters? Everything that happened would make her feel bitterly disappointed. Revenge? Take revenge on Aimsha and Roy? Revenge on Aimsha and Roy. Did Katia have that ability? Or did she think she had a chance of winning with her? It was impossible. Feline was confident. But she was not that arrogant. She did not think the two of them had a chance of winning. Katia, we should take our time, Feline said calmly. She was here to help. But that did not mean she was willing to be a moth to a flame. The Satanists were a terrifying cult. Everyone in the Satanists was filled with terrifying and crazy thoughts. Moreover, every member of the Satanists had dark powers. Are you unwilling to help me? Katia raised her head and looked at Feline. I can understand. I can solve it myself. Katia, how are you going to solve it? I have my own way. We are not thinking about revenge now. We need to leave New Orleans, Feline said. I won't stop you if you want to leave. But don't stop me from getting my revenge either. That's not revenge, that's suicide. Feline growled as he grabbed Kajel's shoulder. I don't need you to care about me. Katia's eyes could not conceal the hatred in them. Perhaps I shouldn't have asked you for help. Kajal, if you have a plan, I am willing to help you. However, if you want to throw your life away, then I must stop you. Feline stared at Kajal with determination. She could see the determination to die in Kajal's eyes. That was why she had to stop Kajar even more. You haven't even recovered from your injuries yet. What reward are you talking about? Feline softened his tone and said, if you really want to take revenge, then the first thing you should do is to heal your injuries and not blindly think about revenge. Kajel's eyes were still filled with unwillingness. To her, that kind of hatred was too unforgettable. As long as she could get revenge, she was willing to pay any price. It's meaningless to die now. If you really want to avenge your comrades, then make a plan. Finally, Kajel wavered a little. Feline suddenly thought of Chen Zhao. No, that guy's identity is unknown. He can't know Kajel's identity. They had to leave now. They couldn't stay in Hilda Hotel. Kajel, let's go now, Feline said. Go. To where? Leave New Orleans. It's too dangerous here. Unwillingness flashed across Kajel's eyes. Clearly, she had not let go of the hatred in her heart. Whenever she thought of her comrades dying before her eyes, her body and mind felt as if they were being burned by flames. Chen Zhao suddenly realized that Feline had disappeared. The staff was cleaning the room that she had stayed in. Her luggage was also gone. Chen Zhao did not use the small world to monitor Feline. He had thought that Feline would only act at night. This made him neglect monitoring Feline. Chen Zhao picked up the phone. Portia. Boss, what's up? Did you send that woman back to her room today? Yes. Why? Portia did not understand why Chen Zhao would suddenly ask about Feline. Did she leave? Chen Zhao asked. Leave? Did you say that she left the hotel? Didn't she tell you? No. Go to the front desk and ask when she left, Chen Zhao said. Boss, do you want to pursue her? You seem to have a family already. I think you should be responsible for your family. Miss Portia, please don't make me repeat my order. Okay. When Portia walked past Feline's door, she saw that her room was open and the staff was cleaning it. She was a bit disappointed. She had thought that she and Feline had a good relationship. At least they were friends. But when Feline left, he did not tell her at all. After asking at the front desk, she confirmed it too. Feline had indeed checked out. She had been gone for more than an hour. Boss, Miss Feline has indeed left for more than an hour. Chen Zhao was even more disappointed. Feline was a good lead. Forget it. Even without her, he could find it. Call Lerberg and Hampson and ask how the things I asked them to do are going. Okay. Portia was more curious about what Chen Zhao wanted. After a series of questions, Portia replied to Chen Zhao. Boss, Mr. Lerberg said that the news you requested will be on tonight's evening news. Mr. Hampson said that tomorrow's headlines will also be the news you requested. Okay. Chen Zhao nodded. Boss, what news do you want them to broadcast? Portia could not hold back her curiosity. None of your business. Also, I told Sam and Vikari that they don't need to go out tonight. Chen Zhao planned to go to the abandoned toll station on the Seabrook Coastal Highway himself. Since the White Spear Society was fighting against Satanism, then they would probably care about the supernatural incidents in New Orleans. If a supernatural incident caused an uproar in the city, they would definitely not stand by and do nothing. That was Chen Zhao's plan. After dinner, Chen Zhao kept staring at the New Orleans channel's news. As expected, a piece of news appeared. It was the news that Chen Zhao had requested. Lerberg had also gotten someone to shoot a blurry video and put it in the news. Chen Zhao was quite satisfied with Lerberg's actions. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.